of the Philippine Textile Research Institute. She is the visionary behind the inclusive and regional textile industry model known as TELA Pilipinas, and the proponent for the yearly TELA Conference of the PTRI, which gathers and invites textile industry stakeholders from all over the country. She is a sought-after speaker, a strategist, and a woman leader. It is my honor to introduce you to the Director of the Philippine Textile Research Institute, Director Sally Bian.
Thank you very much, Lilo. Nag-research ka, ha? Thank you. No, I appreciate that. Good afternoon, everyone. I wanted to just share with you some ideas about what exists in our world. And I'm going to try and present us basically 3 points. The first point is, of course, what we do at the PTRI, but also our context in the Philippine setting. As Director or Executive Director Bob Dizon earlier mentioned to us, wherever we are in that Industrial Revolution 1 to 4 versions, we really have a lot that we can already put in. So if we are in Industrial Revolution 1.0 in mechanization and going into the mass production side of the 2.0, we now have to be iterating that into many different iterations. So do we have a... So first of all, I guess a number of you guys here are familiar with the Philippine Textile Research Institute. We are one of 7 research and development institutes under the Department of Science and Technology. Each one of us has a particular specialization in our line. In our case, it is on textiles and related industries. So we aim to be, we are the center of excellence in textile science, innovation, sustainable and competitive in textile, garment and allied industry. So this is our vision. Thank you. Okay, thank you very much. So we essentially do research and development. We are into technical services. We have technology transfer. A lot of the things I'm going to mention to you in terms of our R&D is really just scratching the surface. There are deeper technologies we are undertaking, and we will not have a sufficient time frame, but I will therefore focus this on what is more particular to our conversation today. But there are a number of research and development activities that are being undertaken in the Institute, which are not going to be mentioned, but be aware that there are far more relevant or other relevant technologies that we are looking at. In terms of technical services, you may be aware that we have the only innovation center for yarns and textiles. How many of you have been to the ICYT? Show of hands. Uy, hindi kasama yung taga-PTRI, ano? Hello naman. Hindi na kayo kasali. Alam niyo ba na meron kaming innovation center for yarns and textiles? Taas naman ang kamay. Right hand. Okay, so I have less than 1% of the audience raising hands. Thank you. But that's good. That means we have a lot of room to grow, a lot of room to go. And how many of you are aware that this innovation center in fact does blended yarns using our natural textile fibers of banana, abaca, cotton, pineapple leaves, and bamboo. I am, for example, wearing a bamboo blend. This is a 25% bamboo blended with 75% Philippine cotton. Philippine bamboo, Philippine cotton. So, kanina the secretary was saying that he was talking to us about what we can do to help or to be, to sort of help the industry and to help create more startup opportunities. Guys, we also are looking to you. Just as ED Bob Dizon said, we need proposals, come take them, they are there for the offering. Similarly, there are a lot of things that we want to undertake, but we need partners. And we need partners in industrialization of certain activities that we have. So in technical services natin, many people come to us and they have processed with us these natural textile fiber blends, which are then used by their communities for weaving purposes. We also do natural dyeing and as well as synthetic dyeing if that is what is requested or required. The tech transfer is where we do a lot of capability building. This is training. We send our trainers both in-house as well as to go to the regional operations to train the weavers or the dyers or the processors whom they would like to have trained in their locations. So the whole idea is going from lab to fab. Fab is fabric applications and beyond. And this is still a guiding principle, not just for us, but for the entire DOST system. Increasingly over the last 4 or 5 years, the idea was to be more towards applied research. Research that is really meant for a particular end or a purpose. It has to come up to something. But it does not mean that we do not do also our own basic and experimental researches. They comprise perhaps 30% in some to 35% in some, but 65% to 70% of what we do are already in applied researches. Science for the People is the theme of our National Science and Technology Week activity. And the Secretary had said this in one of the venues. Science for the People really means that we are doing what we are doing for what? We cannot forget why we are doing what we are doing. Who are we doing this for? Why are we doing this? Bottom line is we're really looking at how we can be of help to our own Filipino people and how we can alleviate and really work on our national development that will lead to the growth, particularly in the countryside, and help in those economic aspirations. So people, our 104, sometimes they say 107, sometimes 100 million, but I think it's 104 million, 106 million Filipinos. And so when I first came on board the PTRI, the goal was to be able to dress up 100 million Filipinos. Can you see that? Ano sa tingin niyo? Can you see that? Can we dress 100 million Filipinos na hindi imported ang gamit? Sabihin niyo sa akin, the things that you're wearing today, do you know if they are imported or made in the Philippines? And by that, yung dahe, right? When you cut it, it's made into apparel. Possible, it was made here. But what about the fabric? Do you know for a fact if the fabric you're wearing today is made in the Philippines?
Not sure.
Not sure. But can you see if we can have something for 100 million Filipinos? Baka sa atin palang kulang na tayo, no? I mean, to work in that industry. Because it will now enable and create many other industries that will help in that process. So, we are, well, mentioned earlier was that the fact that when you speak of Industrial Revolution 4.0, it really means many, many things. You're going from big data to your AI. You're going into cyber physical spaces. This is where your biochemical as well as your cyber spheres are already fused into one. But we have to look at our own Philippine context. So I will give just a few examples and then we will go into some international examples. The idea here is I'd like you to think about it and imagine what we can do, what would be feasible for us to do, what can we undertake, what can you do, right? So if you're here because you have an interest in what we have to talk about. Tama? Or napilitan kayo? Napilit sa inyo. Pinapunta kayo ng boss nyo. So okay, we want to really, I don't want to use the word challenge, but we want to show you what is happening in other places or what can possibly also be brought to our own land or our own territories. We mentioned earlier that you really are now integrating vertically and horizontally. And that your stakeholder could be your very same person as part of that sphere. So this is really, I'm taking a lot of material from the Ellen MacArthur Foundation. If it has not been known to many, we are very much attuned to circularity or the circular economy. We believe that that has to form part of how we want to undertake things because we're interested in a sustainable way of growth and development. So circularity is something that we are very much interested in and we advocate. And so this basically tells us that we are really, our processes, the protocols, procedures that are being in place, the creation of product or services, you really are involving and collaborating and integrating your networks. So it is not silo network, it's no longer matrix, you are really working alongside each other. And so your communication and the way that you bring in the data and the information is more integrated in that respect. That's the ideal scenario. So our textile IR in particular, we mentioned it started in the 17th century with the first loom that was done. This was powered by steam. and we went to the 18th century where we had already a mechanized version that was powered by electricity, or rather, 19th century was powered by electricity. Earlier, someone mentioned that it would be great to see how we can now integrate and make it more mechanical. In fact, the power looms are mechanical. The power looms are already integrated. You can now, the jacquard looms can already operate with designs that are built in and put in. It has been in place. Did you know that the original founder and developer of the car, Toyota, Mr. Toyota, made one of the first hand looms, or one of the first, sorry, not hand loom, Adobe loom. Adobe loom can integrate the sign into the system. And why did he do it? Because he felt sorry for his mother. He felt bad that his mother had to work so hard to be able to incorporate the sign into the weaving process. And so this was for him his inspiration. I tell you, those looms we still have. And they still run. They're still operational. So if you're interested to see what that looks like, as a car, it's in our PTRI Textile, our Innovation Center for Yasin Textile. And then we had the first automated loom, and the steam-powered looms, and then the jacquard machine. So this is essentially how it has progressed on the weaving side. We're not even touching on knitting. Knitting is a fairly new technology, maybe about 60, 70 years already, or just that. And in knitting, you're already going from, you know how you hand knit? How many of you have ever seen anyone do a hand-knitted sweater or shawl? Meron ba bang, so some of you actually know about it, right? So from hand knitting, you then have flatbed machines, you have circular machines, you have computerized machines, and now you have 3D knitting machines. The whole body knit. Who owns a fly knit sneaker? The fly knit sneaker is a one-piece, no seam sneaker, and it is knitted straight from the time that, just imagine, we are fortunate to have had this project, or to have this project on the 3D body scanning. We're very privileged to have Mr. Richard Zhao of LATEC, who is the one who supplied us with this technology. He's sharing with us some studies later on, but we're very fortunate to have this. But imagine that you scan your foot. That measurement is sent straight to the knitting machine. You can put your design. It's knitted to your shape and size, and it is made for you. And you can incorporate your Fitbit requirements into your shoe. You run and it will tell you how much. The sensors will tell you how much you have run, how much calories, how much energy, etc., 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 just by wearing your shoe. So these are things that I think are going to be very interesting for us to delve deeper into. I want to just share with you the circularity ideas coming from the Ellen MacArthur Foundation. You're free to look into that website. They are very generous, and we asked permission if we could share some materials, and they very much gladly said yes, by all means. They give you a lot of tools, a lot of materials available there. So here, what it is trying to say, you are really looking at two spheres. This is your biological sphere, and you have your technological sphere. On the biological sphere, imagine us making, for example, this bamboo, 70% cotton, or 75 cotton and 25% bamboo. After you remove the fiber from the bamboo, you have a lot of waste material. What happens to that? It can go back to the soil. That's your biological sphere. If you're familiar with the models of, let's say, even the pineapple leaf materials that we produce, or the pineapple leaves, we do 20% pineapple leaf. After you have extracted the fiber from the leaves, what happens to the considered waste? It can go back to the soil. Eventually, you can take a look at whether you can regenerate cellulose from out of that, because perhaps it can still have cellulose material that you can then re-extrude or extrude back to create new fiber, new yarn, new material. Then on your technological side, you're looking at how you can make better use or full use of whatever material that you use. The chemical, for example. I'm very pleased that one of our researchers had taken a look at spent liquor. Another one looked at the dye, how it can be exhausted. In other words, you can continue exhausting dye that you can extract from certain plant materials. The spent liquor is fantastic because it reduces, I think, 70 or 80% reduction in water or chemicals. It was 80%. It was a significant amount. So we are very thrilled to be able to come up with those little exercises or researches. And here is where we go out to the public and tell you guys, hey, hello, come and see us because there's a lot of technology out there that we can already apply. So in the technological sphere, there are multiple layers going from the different parts of your value transformation or value chain, from your source to your converter, to your manufacturer, to your consumer, your retailer. It all goes back into the process in different parts or avenues of the system. So essentially, the system is you're just signing out waste. A year ago, we did a forum on circularity is equal to, waste is equal to resource. When you design out the waste, you're basically using that as an input material. So there is no such thing as a waste anymore. And that is really, when you have a waste, the essence is there is a design flow. So you have to go back and figure out how that can be retooled or checked or improved so that there is no wastage and you go back into the system with more efficiency and effectivity. You have to keep materials and products in use. That means you make things last and you make things to last. So if you have to repair something, you have to fix something new, that is the idea for a consumer's perspective. If you want to know how you can be better at keeping fashion together, then that's an idea. How do you sew on a button? How do you fix that zipper? That's from the consumer perspective. From the retail model, there are also retail models. You can have returns to the retailer. There are models of this in many parts of the country. One brand has brought it to the Philippines, it's part of their advocacy. You can bring in or return a bag of clothes and they will sort it out. Oh, this is useful, we can reuse, we can donate. This one, no. Let's send it to some far-flung place where they can now tear it apart. And so we can regenerate, we can melt it down, regenerate, and you can create new materials from out of this. So those are already existing models. And essentially regenerate natural systems. Bottom line is you want it to take care of itself. Has to be biodegradable. I use the word has because we cannot really accumulate so much more. This is being contested by I think one of our environmental groups. They're contesting the fact that the Philippines was named as the third most polluting, contributing to ocean plastics. You've heard about that story, right? So we have been earmarked as the third most polluting next to Indonesia and China. They're contesting this because they're saying they don't think we produce that much. So it must be coming from elsewhere. Nevertheless, it still is the case that you can find the third highest supply of ocean plastics in our part of the world. So the more regenerative natural systems we have, the better off it is going to be for all of us, for our people and our planet. Because sabi lang nila walang option B. There is no planet Earth 1.0 or 2.0. There's only 1.0 so far. Although, a lot of Milky Way studies are saying that there are many more planet Earth-like. So let's see, which one comes first? We discover that first, or, we fix our things in this planet first. So our way of addressing this is by working on our own framework, our closing the loop on fashion framework. I have shared this a number of times with a number of you, and so I apologize if it keeps cropping up. It's mainly because we anchor a lot of the work we do on really look at the systems orientation. So we start by identifying your agricultural materials and doing the conversion to fiber, to yarn, to fabric, to apparel. Essentially, it's your value chain. And from the value chain, you now go down to the retailer. The retailers have their own models. Your consumer, you have your own way of addressing how do you contribute to the system. From there, you have post-consumer recycling. As I mentioned, you can always break it down so that you can have a rewear that we produce new fiber, new yarn, new fabric, and you go back all the way to your apparel stage down to the retail. So this is your circularity in motion. We show you two areas, two levels to show you the primary, this is the original, and your circularity is in your secondary. So this is really the basis or the starting point for the kind of researches or the R&D work that we are undertaking. Each work that we do takes care of an element in this value chain so that we can, in the end, achieve what we would like to see happen. Total recycling or upcycling of materials. And that was why my question earlier to Edie Baptison is, we have to start with that system in mind. You have a collection system, but when you collect, how do you sort? How do you determine which one is synthetic, which one is a blend, which one is natural? Then what do you do afterwards? So this will entail a lot of study and a lot of collaboration from both the academic as well as the private sector institutions. And so the goal is really to enable this whole system. And we are particularly focused on two things in this NSTW episode. We are looking at the Textile Product Development Center, and the seat of that, or the focus of that for this year's activity is the 3D body scanning technology. We'll speak about that a bit more later on. And at the same time, we are looking at Tela Pilipinas. Tela Pilipinas also has a little booth that is interactive, and this is really where you will see your localized integration or localized ecosystem, where you have the source of raw material, and then you bring this into input material to another process to another process. So from your fiber to your yarn to your fabric to the finished material to your finished apparel or end product. So this is another way that we are indicating to you the kinds of activity that we are looking at, and they are all going to be focused on that whole idea that in the end we're going to want to achieve that ability to be able to use whatever it is that we're already wearing today as our source of raw material. But this is no longer linear or in the value chain. This now tells you the centers or the seats where they're going to be focused or localized. So we have a lot of aspirations, we have a lot of ambitions, because we think that there are so many opportunities that are open to us in the Philippines. So here, the substrate will be playing on a lot of fiber developments we already worked on. We're looking at smart textiles, and in the crux of those two are your engineered textiles and nanofiber technology. In the crux of smart textiles and the sustainable textile solutions, you have your regeneration technology with non-woven fiber or fabric R&D, as well as the dyes and pigments R&D, and of course sustainable textiles where we have the rewear and the closing the loop on fashion, not just as technologies, but as a system, because the approach has to be very systemic. So just to give you an idea of where we are with this, we are looking at the Textile Product Development Center. Presently, what this means is we have a computerized way of looking at weave patterns. It's a visual way of looking at weave patterns. It's a Adobe Loom. It's not very, very complicated for some, but it is certainly for us. It's going to be very helpful for the design perspective. I will show you what the implication is in a short while. And in addition, we have, this is what I would say is at the moment the heart, the center of what we're doing, so 3D body scanning. And here, we're looking at anthropometric data towards the creation of a Philippine sizing system. To begin with, the goal is an integrated product development system. So that from the time you are scanned, there is no human intervention, there are no medidas, no cloth measuring tapes. You are scanned electronically, the information is now converted into measurements, the measurements become patterns. If you wish to now have this graded into many sizes, there is a grading system that will be employed, and eventually if you want this cut, you can go straight into cutting. So in that respect, no human intervention, except it's all software driven. You're now looking at CAD/CAM. You're now looking at how a computer can aid in first the visualization, and then secondly in the way it is laid out, the markers and the patterns and the design. Next is you can visualize. You can visualize the style, and you can do prototyping. So I mentioned digital pattern making and the digital marker making and cutting. But we wish to expand this to also include digital printing and direct-to-print or direct-to-garment printing. So there's a lot of opportunities. We will be looking at yarn creation and loop simulation, seamless or whole body knitting. So there are other ideas that we would like to put in place, because we would like to help and see how we can enable social entrepreneurs, designers, to be able to come up with quick product types. And hopefully it will encourage industry to also set them up so that they can do production. But to begin with, yes, we would love to be able to assist in the development of product and designs through the use of this space. We will eventually be opening up a design and incubation hub where there could be collab spaces, and you can do just idea generation or ideation. We can do small activities, small events, and it's to encourage really creative output that can go into something that can feed into the research work of what we do, a collaboration, something that can develop product as well as process and systems. I mentioned earlier about the digital, the Adobe Loom. This is your visual tool for patterns and all. Well, the question is, I think, Jeannie, you mentioned earlier, or they will die, right? The traditional patterns. When you were asking the question about the intellectual property, right? You were saying that if we do not do certain things, that tradition could die. Well, this is another way of saying this. We have to digitalize, or the pattern could be forgotten. The tradition could get lost. The communities may not be able to repeat it because there's already concern. No one wants to repeat this pattern. It's so difficult. This is a mechanism, like you know how musical score sheets in the past, we can play the Beethovens and the Mozarts today because the musical score sheets of those centuries we can read and write, and somebody can now play them. Similar, this system can actually create the pattern. You can do it two ways. You can create the pattern you have in mind, input, encode it, and it will create a prototype for you. Of course, it will not do it by itself. The pattern is there. You still have to weave it as you would a normal, but the pattern is already incorporated. If you needed 40 harnesses, in this case, you only have 2 pedals. No need to have 40 pedals or so many pedals, or 4 or 8 pedals. So it's already there. The other way is the reverse. I have a pattern. I want to make sure that this is in the library, that this is archived, that the next generation will know how to do this. Then you can also input that pattern and you can have that in your library of references. So there are so many opportunities. So here's the call. Guys, we can't do all of this ourselves. You can come, bring in your pattern, bring in your design, work with us, and we can come up with something so that we can increase that library. So both the visual side of our human body scanning also needs to be loaded with style and information because it does not come with it. We want it to be our very own. I mean, Richard was very kind. He put in some Filipiniana outfits for us. But there are other things that we didn't get to put in. So we need people who would say, I want to be able to do this pattern. How do I do it? Let's see what we can do. Okay, so at the expense of people in my office not sleeping, we will see what we can do about that. So then, this is just an example of what it will look like. So here you see the pattern, and this one is interpreted, this is interpreted, this is this. If this were done manually using, what do you call that paper? With, the graphing paper. Using that paper, you can see it as this way. You can have just the blocks. But if you have the digital pattern, you can then incorporate that, information. You can have it on both the bottom as well as on the right or left hand sides of your pattern. So this is now a way of reading and writing. So the challenge then again is we have to, and I'm looking at our TSD guys, we will have to come up with training modules on how to read and write because not everybody can read and write. So this is in itself a study. Not so simple. In fact, we had a number of designers, I think in our concept of cloth project that we did last year. They found it extremely challenging, but also extremely fulfilling if you are able to now accomplish this. So here are some examples, and I mentioned those horizontal and vertical integration across the value chain, end-to-end digital integration, networked production systems, a virtual world and modular approach to production. It no longer becomes a question of long production lines or assembly lines, whereas before we had a lot of companies that bought from the Philippines. They were working on the concept of deep and shallow. Deep and shallow means you have a lot of units, few styles. But today, you know that it is wide and what is the word? Wide and shallow. So deep and narrow, it's a lot of quantities and narrow styles. Now it is wide and shallow. So the turnaround time has to be also faster. Networks. Networks is a local company based in between Bohol and Cebu. They are in the Danahon Reef Bank, which is a double reef. I think it is one of 6 double reefs in the world. And so this is a protected area, and they have found that they have a lot of fishing, obviously, in the location. And in partnership with the London Zoological Society, they started 20 years ago to collect the nylon nets that are being used by fishermen. For those in circularity, nylon is one material that you can use in perpetuity, meaning it does not degrade. There are, of course, materials that you can use only 2 times, some materials that you can use 7 to 8 times, but in the case of nylon, our understanding is you can use this in more perpetuity than other synthetic materials. So nylon becomes very interesting because you can also derive it from biosources. You can do biosynthetics. So before, it was simply a matter of natural, biological, and you have synthetic synthesized in the laboratory. But today, you can actually draw a lot of this. So this is the brilliance of man, right? When they talk about population explosion, that doesn't make sense because the brilliance of man really comes out when you need it, it comes out. And so you now have a lot of systems and sources that are happening that are addressing the world's direst problems. So here, I present networks because this was a community collaboration with one local NGO and the London Zoological Society. They were able to, I think, they already went over so many hundreds of thousands of tons of nylon that was sent. Here's the thing, not in the Philippines, together with another place in the world, Cameroon, they sent it to, I understand, Slovakia. And from Slovakia, so 224 metric tons, this was their, I think 2017 report. 2,200 families that have access to finance, 64,000 people enjoying a healthier environment. So from the Philippines and Cameroon, they are looking at, sorry it's not so very clear, but they're looking at how they can now retrieve the material, the nylons, and how that can then be converted into something, and the product is the regenerated nylon EcoNyl. EcoNyl is being processed in the UK, Slovakia, I believe, then the copper tiles are done in the UK, but today it is already used as EcoNyl material that is made into swimwear, resort wear, and interestingly enough, there is a fashion designer in the Philippines who is using it, except she's not manufacturing it in the Philippines. So these are our interesting challenges, because it would be great to have seen it gone really full circle, but no, it just went past and then came back. So, but I'm letting you know because I think these are things that have to be borne in mind to see how we can improve upon them. So regeneration, reuse, and remanufacture. Who can relate? Can you relate? Right? No? Closet full of nothing to wear, right? But you know what? Today, it is giving us access to an endless closet. This is what the internet has done for us, and this is where a lot of social enterprises and young enterprises have really come up with business opportunities because the internet has enabled them. But more than that, can you imagine that you're now looking at how you can be already sized, how you can already be picking and collecting. In this particular model, I think this is tote. This is tote. In this particular model, you can actually, it's a service. You subscribe. So I'm explaining this because this is now part of another way that they are looking at, you can correlate to technology. It's now a subscription. Just like you subscribe to a magazine, something comes to you every month. This one, you subscribe. If you want 2 pieces of clothing every month, you get it in a tote bag. It's sent to you, depending on the level of subscription that you have. And after you don't want it anymore, you put it back in the tote, send it back to them. Okay, so of course that means you need to have a reliable cleaning service. You need to have good logistics participation or partner here. It means that your system of collection is also quite well, or quite, really you've already set that in good perspective. So this is one service that is being done in that department. Another one is from Beijing. Richard, you may know of this, White Closet. The same. Here, you can take your pick. It can be sent to you anytime you want it or need it. You are a subscriber. You're a member. It's like a club. You are a member of the club and you're entitled to so many every month. So this already changes the concept of ownership. It is no longer the product that you own. It is the use of the product or the rental or the lease of the product, as is the case with the model on Next Closet. It's a British, I think it's a British brand. And in their case, you know what? They're looking at, in their case, they're looking at, you can't really see them, but these are your second-hand luxury fashion. So you have brands like Balenciaga, Armani, you have Alexander Wang, Christian Dior, Christian Louboutin, Diane Furstenberg, Klein brands. You now have access to these Klein brands through this closet. And you imagine there are no borders, no barriers. You can Google them right now and connect to them and perhaps place your subscription and do your ordering. So this has broken already our concept of the traditional production in the brick and mortar. And the concept of product. What is the product? Mud jeans, lease or own, designing for recycling. This means you can send back whatever it is that you have, or jeans basically. You can choose what you want. They have a whole system down. They will send it to a place, they will remove the rivets, the zippers, the buttons, and they will break down the fabric to make it into a new fiber, a new yarn, a new fabric. So this is recycling of that. So there's a shift in the ownership of the product as a service already. So you can see here, keep your mud jeans for longer. They reach out to you, you have a 12-month lease. It's 7.50 euro monthly that you pay to lease to do this system. The membership fee is 29 euro, and you can switch and recycle. Okay? The beauty in their system is they can actually recycle. They do not just send product around for people to use and reuse. They can actually break it apart. Not them necessarily, but have a partner, a factory or manufacturing firm in this aspect. In the case of Orta Anadolu, which is, I think this is Turkey. This is based in Turkey. Value in fabric flaws. So anything that there is a flaw, they can do something about. So let me show you. This is a group of women in a local community, small community, breaking apart stuff, removing what needs to be removed before they bring it down the funnel and convert it into another product. Okay. And in a more domestic, or rather closer to home, this is a model from Thailand. This is called More Loop. In the case of More Loop, they are a platform for scraps, textile waste. They have already worked or have gotten to a number of different textile companies in Thailand, and they have a relationship and they are committed to get the textile waste, and they offer it in a very how do you say, this is a very market-friendly way of doing it. They tell you what is available, they tell you how much it costs, and you can just buy in whatever quantity you need to buy. So that is also another model. In our case, where do we go? We don't go to Tai-Tai ba? Nobody goes to Tai-Tai? Oh, okay, but yeah, they consider that that is already a place where you can buy. That is not an industry, folks. So if people are thinking that's a textile industry, nope, that's not a textile industry. Nevertheless, this is a model that is already existing. So they are now able to export to other countries in Asia. So then, what does that imply? You do not need to have 3,000 meters requirement of a fabric as a minimum requirement of the producer or the mill to buy. You don't have to go to the ones that have bigger requirements. You can go check with them for 10 meters here or 50 meters there. So it's a big enabler. It democratizes for the small manufacturers and the micro operators. So here our challenge is, how do we rethink Philippine fashion? How do we reimagine local fashion or wearables? How do we re-envision exports for home, for example, and reinvent ASEAN lifestyle or re-engineer world textiles? So I'd like to leave you with this challenge, because Industry 4.0, as ED Bob had mentioned to us earlier, it's not so much about the state of the art and the best and the greatest material equipment out there. It's how we use it. How can we make full use of what it is that we have, and what is it that we actually need to be able to arrive at this. So maraming salamat. Thank you for listening, and thank you for
Thank you, Director Eluga. I know that you have questions for her, but later on we can actually ask those questions during the panel discussion. But we also have those pieces of papers that you can get from our usherettes, or you can already source them from your table. You can write it down so that you don't forget it. Okay, now let's move forward to our next speaker. He is the president of North International Distributors, the leading digital printing and 3D printer distributor in the country. North International provides exceptional state-of-the-art digital print solution to a broad array of industry segments, covering general commercial printing, labels, packaging, signages, displays, finishing, direct-to-garment design, manufacturing, engineering, and 3D technology. To discuss about industry innovations in textile production and product development, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Alan T. have Chin.
Nagpa-pray ka naman.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Alan Haushin from Nord, and I was invited today to talk about market-responsive product strategies for the textile and garments industry. So, just a brief background about our company. I'm going to talk about that to start with, and then I'm going to talk about the industry trends, and then what are these technologies that can help address these trends, and then a summary. So our company, we represent a lot of digital technologies in the Philippines related to graphic arts. So we serve Philippine market. We have offices in Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao. And we also serve neighboring cities neighboring areas such as Guam and Saipan that are far away from the mainland US. So we serve them from the Philippines. These are some of the industries that we serve. Commercial printing, labels and packaging, sign and display, finishing, fabrication, fashion and textile, and 3D. So if we're talking about market responsive technologies, I think we have to start first with the mega trends. So what are we trying to address? So I'd like to start off by talking about 4 key trends that are happening in the world today. So first is related to the economy. First is textile, which is our main topic for today. The social aspect, and lastly, sustainability. So let's start first with economy. So I won't dwell on this one. Our previous speakers have talked about, industry 1.0, 2, 3, and up to 4. So what I'd like to show though is some trends and figures related to the garment and textile industry. So here, this is the growth of the global textile industry. So it's on a growth trend. Apparel also is on a growth trend. What is interesting though is that back in 2011, the source of apparel and footwear primarily came from Western market, and 40% was the rest of the world. It has slowly shifted more to Asia and to other parts of the world instead of the Western market. So before, it was 60-40. In 2025, it's projected to be the other way around now, 45 and 55. This is also another trend that's happening. Online business, e-commerce is taking over physical retail spaces. So this, in 2018, I don't think you can see the date here. 2018, it was the first time that Amazon passed the net income of Walmart. So previously, this is Amazon, then this is Walmart, and then in 2018, finally it surpassed the net income of Walmart. So this shows a global trend that's happening today. In textile, so first, I think we all know this, fast fashion is taking over. So this is the line for total global apparel and footwear. This is the growth trend. So it's pretty flat. Here, the growth trend of fast fashion brands is much higher. So here you see 5%, this is a little over 15%. And then even up to today, there is still a gap. So the growth of fast fashion brands is much faster than the global apparel and footwear. So we all know about these brands, Zara, Uniqlo, H&M, etc. For social, so these are some of the things that I think all of us experience today. We all refer to social media whenever we want to try to see, okay, what should I buy? what fashion is now on trend. So here, 71%, 74%, 44%, they all refer to bloggers and to social media, websites, and that's a lot of influence that is being spread in social media today. Here's another trend that we see. Percentage of US adults who have personalized a product service by industry. So this is another trend socially. There's a lot of personalization and customization that's being done today. So if before it was mass market products, today it's all personalized and customized. So I think it's not just in fashion, but you also see it in terms of packaging. I think you also the campaign of Coca-Cola, diba? They did yung Share a Coke campaign. So that one is considered as mass customization. Personalization can go down to the point that you can have one-offs. So I'll show later some technologies that you can have one-off designs, so unique to yourself. So here, among all these industries, apparel and footwear comprise of the biggest percentage that is personalized. So fashion says me too, style says only me. So this is something that can be done today. I'll show some technologies that can do this. Sustainability, another trend that's happening in the world today. So we have a lot of different organizations today that are very conscious about the environment and about health, safety and health. So you have here fair trade, cruelty-free, Greenpeace, and so on and so forth. So I think we know about this one, that the textile industry is a very big contributor to world pollution. It's actually the world's second largest polluter right today. What is interesting to see is this one, 17 to 20%. This is the estimated percentage of industrial water pollution that comes from textile dyeing and treatment. So what do these trends mean? So first, consumers are looking for shorter runs. They want no minimum order quantities. Second, they want faster turnaround, which is signified by your online market. They order it, they want it delivered by today. The third is personal expression. So designers today, millennials, bloggers, they want to express themselves in a unique manner. And lastly, people are looking for environmental solutions. Eco-friendly inks and output, minimal waste. There's also another topic that I'd like to talk about. So those were global trends, specifically in Asia. They consider ASEAN region to be the potential next gold rush for e-commerce. So here, ASEAN, so you see here growth in number of internet users. This is the growth percentage. So this is ASEAN, 14%. So it's slowing down in US and Europe, very mature markets. But ASEAN is still on a fast growth rate. This is the number of internet users by country and the projected growth. So this is 2015 up to 2020. So you'll see that Philippines, back in 2015, it was 55 million. By 2020, it's projected to go up to 93 million. So again, this affects e-commerce as well. This is also the projection of the size of the e-commerce business that's going to happen in the next few years. So this is where we are. This is where the Philippines is today. And this is where it's projected to be. So it's more than a 10-fold increase. So this presents a lot of opportunities if we are looking at business opportunities in the country. This table also shows shopping channels. So here you have the different industries: cuisine, catering, home and living, education, and so on and so forth. We have fashion here. So you'll see here this red is the physical store. This is where it's shoppers purchase from both online and physical store. This yellow-green is the online store. So you'll see here that the top three is travel and leisure, entertainment, and fashion. So again, related to the e-commerce trend. So there was a survey done in 2018, done on industry executives, and this is how they described the fashion industry. So it's changing, it's digital, and it's fast. So how should we respond to these trends? So I'd like to start off by showing a success story video of a customer that is now adopting these new technologies for their business. Voiceover, so I'll do the voiceover. So basically, this is a company in the US. They're the biggest in the US doing custom uniforms, t-shirts. So you go online and then you order, and I think in 1 or 2 days it gets delivered. So what they're showing here is their operation, their internal operation. So they used to use silk screen, but right now they're using purely digital. So what they do is they license brands. So they license brands and parang sports teams, and then you can go online and order, and they print. So it's just in time, on demand. So no inventory, no risks. And then once they get the order, that's the only time that they produce. So what they're showing here is the process. So you can, to adapt it here, you can buy a t-shirt from, let's say, Divisoria, and then someone orders a design. Then you can print on it directly, and then you can ship it on the same day, all on the same day. So that's an example of one company that has adapted to market needs. So before, they were using silk screen, which would take days or even weeks. So they have a design, and then what would happen is that they would have to create new screens, and then since a screen is very expensive, they would require minimum quantity. This one, they can do one-offs. So there are 3 technologies that I'd like to discuss today. The first is direct-to-fabric. The second is direct-to-garment. And the third is dye sublimation. So we'll start first with direct-to-fabric. So again, to showcase what this is, again, we'd like to show a video of a success story of a customer who has adapted. So it's a company called Spoonflower. It's a company in the US, and their business model is this. They serve the entire country, so designers, interior designers, fashion designers all over the country, if they have a design in mind, they can make their own pattern. They can go online, order fabrics, upload their design, and then it will be produced and shipped to them. in whatever quantity you want. You want 1 square meter, 10 square meters, 100 square meters, they can produce it on different types of fabrics. So hopefully yung voiceover works. It's not working again, but as you can see, they have a website. They have an open website, and then you place the order there, and then they receive hundreds and I think even thousands of orders every day. They can print any pattern. So this is what their site looks like.
We really had to make a plan to create an industrial. We want to.
So that's the technology that they have. It's a direct-to-fabric printer.
In August, and we have a lot of growth on the basis of print on 5 different print platforms. The thing that makes the fabric cost like
Yeah, so it has limitless colors. You can do one design after the other. Continuous printing.
which is an anchor of any surface designed to bring out vibrancy.
When the Cornette and the Library first arrived in the building, we were all excited to see what the prints would look like coming off. And I remember gathering in this very room and spreading out all of the prints on the table and just being amazed at the richness of black in particular that the Cornette was able to achieve.
It uses pigment-based inks. By different types of inks, you have reactive, acid. So this one is particularly pigment-based inks. So this is the traditional workflow of textile printing. You have pre-treatment, printing, steaming, washing, drying. And then if you do direct to fabric printing, it's only 2 steps. You print and then you dry. That's it. So you can literally get your fabrics print while you wait. So before it was supply and demand. So today the industry is demand and supply. At least that's what's happening today in US and Europe. So these are some of the applications for direct-to-fabric. You can use it for home decor, fabrics and media, bags, and footwear. That technology can print kasi on a wide variety of materials, including, let's say, leather or leatherette. So the next technology is direct-to-garment. So again, just to show you a video on how it works.
The one-off technology we have, and put something right in the middle of that in screen frame to accomplish speed of market small runs seamlessly. So the Vulcan really sits in a sweet spot for our company. We call it the sweet spot because it sits between our digital one-offs and our screen printing bands.
So if you're familiar with screen printing process, you have to create screens and then you have to do CMYK or spot color. Here, it's all digital print heads, and then you can print unlimited color combinations.
As well as all of our e-com customers.
The ease of preparation is amazing. Taking something from hours of prep from 14 colors.
So they're describing the traditional process, and then now this is the process that they're using today.
We have 3 people that run the Vulcan. So the speed of the machine is absolutely amazing. There's never been digitally produced garments on a machine, but it is truly outrageous and amazing to be able to take an order for 50, 70, 244, 300 and load a file and ship the order the same day.
Incredibly efficient.
They talk about same-day shipment.
So at the end of the day, it's the big, more money, those types of orders that leverages our time for human capital.
Our daily job runs have allowed us to take jobs from screen print, which are
So that's yung traditional screen printing, carousel or oval.
funnel them through the Vulcan technology.
And this is the digital technology that's available
Which makes
today.
us more efficient on the screen printing side and gives us speed to market on the smaller runs. We run our equipment 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So we truly battle test for needs. Their service.
Okay, so you have screen printing, and then you also have heat transfer printing. So this one describes your heat transfer. Screen printing is even more tedious. So this one is heat transfer. So you pre-treat, heat press, dry, print, and then heat press again. If you're doing direct to garment, it's 2 steps only. So you print on the garment and then you dry it. That's it. So this is the process today that a lot of the e-commerce businesses are doing. So consumer, and then they get their orders from the website. And then production line, very simple, and then it's sent. So it's a very, very simple cycle, but very fast turnaround within 1 day. So these are some of the applications: t-shirts, beachwear, activewear, streetwear. So the technologies today of direct-to-garment printing allows you now to print on very big panels. So before it was just limited to A4 size. Today they have platforms that can print on dresses already. So as big as that one. Okay, then lastly you have dye sublimation.
Inditex, as one of the fashion leaders, has the responsibility.
So Inditex, as you know, is Zara.
Inditex joined the Ellen MacArthur Foundation initiative, Make Fashion Circular. In this direction, we propose Oasia, one of our more sustainable brands, to join this small-scale project together with Halotex and HP.
So this is a joint project between
This pilot,
Oasia
we
and HP.
our Oasia joints and ask people to bring the old t-shirts with them to be recycled.
So Director Celia was talking about recycling earlier. So this is one of the things that is being done today.
Sustainability is core to the HP strategy. When we learned about the Make Fashion Circular initiative, we had to be involved. Using HP stitch printer, we
This
printed
is the dye sublimation printer.
Using the Oisho app, you can scan the t-shirt and then a video is revealed that tells the amazing story of how the t-shirt was made.
What we have learned from this pilot project is that new business models are possible in the fashion industry. We can make fashion circular.
So this is the process of dye sub. So you design, you print, and then you press, and then you assemble the garment. So it's very simple. And again, no minimum quantities, very simple, very straightforward. The entire process can be finished in 1 day. So it's not just on garments. So this one shows t-shirts in particular. but we I don't know if we brought samples, but there are actually applications on home decor. Kasi the width of the printer can be as wide as 10 feet. So I've seen applications doing fabric wallpaper. So if you want to create a sound acoustic yung acoustic panels for rooms for noise reduction, you can already do that. So that can be done through dye sublimation technology. Dye sublimation is primarily for polyester, polyblends and polyester fabrics, so synthetic fabrics. So some applications is soft signage. You can do signages with it, sportswear. So most of the racing t-shirts and if some of you join yung mga marathon, most of those t-shirts are done through dye sublimation. Then of course you have fashion, and then you have household application or mga linens. So in summary, this is the difference between traditional and digital textile printing. So traditional is quite complex. And there's a reason why it's complex. Because you set it up, there's a setup time, there's a setup cost, but you can do volumes. If you're doing volume runs, I would say that traditional analog textile printing is still the best technology to go with if it's very big volumes. But it's complex. It's a costly setup, which is why if you have short runs, it's going to be very expensive to do it in the analog method. And, so you normally would want to do it digitally if your runs are very small or very short runs. You have limited design flexibility because, as you can see here, these are some of the screens that you have. So once you create a screen and you make a mistake, so let's say one letter is off, or you do you use a wrong font, or you have the wrong I don't know, colors, then you need to recreate the screens. So it's very costly. With digital, you don't have any screens. So you make a mistake, and then you don't like the design or color, you create another sample or prototype, it's okay. It's still the same cost. So, as I mentioned earlier, this is large batch manufacturing. This is no MOQ, no minimum order quantity. Then lastly, this one generates a lot of waste. Kasi the setup time alone, the setup process is very, very complex and tedious. So before you even produce the first print, you have a lot of wastage. And it usually uses a lot of harmful chemicals. While in digital, there's much less. Some technologies still have a little, but generally it's much more greener. So a lot of the digital printing manufacturers right now go for global standards like Ecotex. So they go for those, they have themselves tested because that's a trend today. And then it produces a lot less waste. So key takeaways. These are the consumer needs today. So they're looking for shorter runs, they're looking for faster turnaround, they're looking for personalization and eco-friendly solutions. So the industry needs, so let's say if you are a producer or a converter or a manufacturer, you need to be able to provide all of these. No minimum order quantities, minimal setup time and waste. You should be able to provide unique solutions, one of a kind, and have environmentally friendly inks and outputs. So these are some of the technologies available today if this is the type of application or requirements that you have. So to close, I'd like to quote a statement that was made by McKinsey. They usually produce kasi a white paper every year, state of fashion globally. So this is what they said this year, 2019. The ones who will succeed will have to come to terms with the fact that in the new paradigm that is taking shape around them, some of the old rules simply don't work. So we have to adapt. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Houchin. And again, we apologize for the technical difficulty that we encountered like minutes ago. We will make sure that the videos that were shown will be available. The links will be available on our website. And we can actually post it and enjoy it in your workplaces or at the comfort of your homes. So if you have any questions for Mr. Houchin, you can actually write them down on the pieces of paper. And later on during the panel discussion, then we can throw the questions to all the speakers today this afternoon. So for our next speaker, the next speaker is the Director of the Foreign Buyers Association of the Philippines. And it is an association actively lobbying the revitalization of the textile and garments industry in the Philippines through the support to policies and bills and pushing for investment incentives for the benefit of our country's workforce. Here to talk about market-responsive product development strategies for the textile and apparel industry is Mr. Dane Buendia.
Good afternoon, I'm Ding Buendia. I'm with FOBAC and actually working with the buying office. We deal with mostly U.S. customers and we still export from the Philippines. And currently, just for your ready reference, we work with brands in the U.S. like Ralph Lauren, Ann Taylor, J. Jill, Vineyard Vines, Nordstrom, American Eagle, AMS, and other brands. So our business majority is for apparel, and I'd like to dwell on product lifecycle management, which is basically dealing with the details of how one handles an export order. PLM is a platform that helps organizations in managing and compels a multi-level inter-country, inter-department, and vendors and suppliers in one portal. It's a combination of all our Excel charts into one system. Because once you export, you're dealing with not just a factory, you're not dealing just with a buyer, you're not just dealing with the manufacturing side, with the production side. You deal with suppliers, and there are numerous suppliers. There are suppliers for fabric, for accessories, for threads, for zippers, and there's a lot of communication. So all of this data are incorporated in the PLM. So it makes it easier for everybody to be basically, all parties are on the same page. It starts with managing descriptions and properties of a product with information technology structures. The whole supply chain is a complex structure involving multiple levels of management departments in the company, suppliers, vendors, logistic companies, and buyers departments, warehouse and liaison work required. It means having in the PLM the following information to which all involved parties are allowed to view, edit, and input data and summarize and keep track of an order. We work with the customers by season. Like in the US, we have 4 seasons. And like we have winter, spring, fall, and summer. So every season, the buyers would normally have their own designs. They would incorporate their designs, their color trends, their color boards, and this requires a minimum of 1 year planning. They forecast the trends, the colors, prices, and check fabric and trims development. In the designing of the styles that they make, they have a lot of designers, and it now requires execution. Remember, we're talking of apparel, and having an actual garment that can be fitted, that can be seen, touched, and felt. So in the apparel industry right now, when we make samples, these samples are sent to the customers and they physically fit it, and they physically make measurements, they physically see how it would fall on the body. Currently, it takes a lot of effort and time in terms of communication and logistics. So designs and styles being ready now needs execution. having an actual garment that can be fitted, seen, touched, and felt. Materials, you need materials. When it's ready, how much do you, like the Philippines, as everybody knows, we don't have textile. So hopefully PTRI can work on that in solving the 100,000 to dress 100 million people. So currently for our exports, we import all our raw materials, even fabric. So you can imagine how much time you need to import the materials, and not just import. You just don't import. You have to see the color, you have to see the print, you have to see the design, you have to see the shrinkage, you have to see the reliability of the fabric. So to import, it involves a lot of people. This involves multiple suppliers, not just one. Because like in a jacket, you can have your shell fabric, your linings, your interlinings, and other parts of the fabrics. And then you have your threads and different kinds of threads and different buttons. So different persons in the supply chain are involved. Garments would need fabrics, interlinings, linings, threads, accessories like buttons, zippers, and other accessories for style. Washing may also be involved, like if you have your denim. So when you have all the materials, to make a garment, you have pattern making from a buyer's tech pack, which will be in a form of a PDM or a product development management. You cut your fabrics and interlining and linings. You assemble, you finish by pressing or packing, and then you ship the actual samples. And then the other side will have customs clearance. So again, as mentioned earlier, everything now is fast. Everything needs time to be lesser and lesser to adapt with the trend. So the minimum lead time now currently to make a garment and send it out would be 7 days. Imagine the amount of work, it's like a month work, and then you have to finish it in 7 days. Everything. So now there's virtual reality, and even garments now have been developed in the computer. So instead of making an actual garment, it is done 3D. 3D systems are being used now. So this is the core, and the software that we currently use for our brands that I've mentioned are Browseware and Optitech. I think I can show the video. The video will present an actual 3D making of a garment, so that instead of going through the whole process, shortening everything, you can just make it 3D. you can change it also by computer. So designers can just do it by computer first instead of having an actual garment. So it cuts the lead time by almost 1.5 months. You can see you can change the print, the colors, the shape. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Wilmia. And so we have appreciated how many energy and resources actually are included when we create a garment or an apparel, and it is also very labor intensive. So I hope that later during our panel discussion, there will be some discussion going on how AI or Industry 4.0 can actually affect the garment industry, being a very labor intensive industry. So moving on to our next speaker, who will talk about fashion design and merchandising in the academy. So our speaker is a graduate of Bachelor of Science in Clothing Technology from the University of the Philippines in Diliman, where she also earned her Master of Technology Management Diploma. In 2010, she graduated in the Master Program in New Textile Design at the Politecnico de Manila, Italy, as a full scholar. She was a senior lecturer in UP Diliman until 2014 and a faculty at the SOFA Design Institute from 2008 to 2016. Currently, she is the program chairperson of the Fashion Design and Merchandising Program at the De La Salle College of St. Benil. Ladies and gentlemen, an artist, a fashion guru, a teacher, and a mentor, Ms. Christine Y. Bennett.
So good afternoon, everyone. So as my profile have been mentioned, I have been in the academy actually for less than 20 years. So actually my presentation is quite different from the previous one. All came from the industry side. Now I would like to share how we do it or how we impart this knowledge and prepare students in the fashion industry. Now I'll be speaking as a teacher, not just a representative of the school I'm currently from right now, which is the De La Salle College of St. Benil. I have been teaching in numerous fashion schools. So more or less, just to give you idea how we teach them how product development is. In fact, this is also a good opportunity for me because we are in the process of always developing our curriculum to be updated to what's out there. Anyhow, to begin, so my discussion would go around fashion design and merchandising, especially here in the Philippines. Most of the students who come in initially want to take fashion design, but later on when they do work, they mostly go to merchandising. So just to define, fashion for us is a style or a style most popular at a given time. So it's basically a time element to explain that clearly to our students. And mainly, it varies because of styles that are characterized by certain details. Then, change of course comes about with time and specific events or changes that happen in the industry and of course, maybe around the world, not just in fashion. Then of course, the most important, the main difference of fashion and art is acceptance. Art, it's something you appreciate, but not necessarily may like or like. But in fashion, the only determining factor that you are fashionable or a designer if somebody accepts it, may it be a brand or a designer. Then of course, we have taste that we have to consider. This in mind is how we teach also the students the different preferences by country, specifically also in the Philippines. Some would still consider us, we are not considered of course a fashion capital per se, and we are somewhat unfortunately considered as a copycat of certain countries. So taste is actually very subjective relative to the market you are trying to target, which I will explain later. So this is actually the style range, or this is how we explain to the students of how you want to place yourself in the fashion industry. And it goes hand in hand with the affiliated industries related to the product development process. So the highest form, of course, is haute couture. Supposedly, haute couture is defined to be handmade, 70% handmade. Speaking legally, this is actually a license in France. To be a couturier, you have to be invited. You don't even apply. So only brands such as Chanel and the big fashion houses that have been in Europe for the longest time are considered haute couturiers. But we have designers locally who do practice couture, but we cannot really call them officially couturier. But again, just to bear in mind, it's actually 70% handmade. So the process itself is very tedious. And again, to match it to the current market available, market choices, speaking as a supplier, it's kind of difficult to create a niche or identify a niche that was willing enough to wait that long. But we do have somehow, but not as couture as we want to be. Then we have the designers. This is what we really have. Designers, basically, they have their clothes designed. They may have illustrated it, or they may have maybe sewn it, but it's not part and parcel that they made it entirely. You can have already a supply chain with this. You can have your own sewers, you can have your own pattern makers, etc. You basically concentrate on the design. So it may be, you may eventually have what you call, so I'm just browsing through because obviously these are of course the examples that we have. Locally, just to explain also, designer is quite a loosely used term. We have fashion designer that we consider to design for garments, being using the technical term, meaning clothes, the one that we wear. Then we have accessory designer, which we usually see as sometimes even consider as crafts. These are the ones who make bags. But at the same time, they still go through the same process and use the same materials more or less. So going back, if you're a designer and eventually want to grow it, you have what you call the bridge line. This is when you eventually make a name for yourself and be able to somehow identify a certain market for yourself and has the capacity now to produce, to mass produce. So some that eventually, of course, were successful to do so. Of course, internationally, we have a lot. Then locally though, this is quite challenging. Only a few have been able to venture from that designer name into mass production. One that has really strongly made it is Rahul Laurel, who has now, of course, branches in certain retail malls. But what our designers normally do, even our students per se, is have what you call collaboration or capsule collections with small retailers. It allows them minimal investment, but at the same time, the mileage of what the retail brand has also. Then this is actually has been the most, I think, used term for the day when I came, is fast fashion. This is where actually, when you say fast fashion, the time and even the trends are, of course, work around the fastest. A lot of times, certain names were discussed already, Zara in particular. Locally, we have also brands that are considered fast fashion. Though this is the challenge now, how to teach the students, because they would say, Miss, Zara's quality is so different from what we have with our local counterparts. But going back to understanding the market, we have to teach them well. You have to understand first the dynamics of what the Philippine market is. Then we have Missy. Missy is basically the basics. This is how we explain to them why some brands do not necessarily follow the trend. Some brands would stick to basics. The most, actually, I notice in schools right now, for students, maybe in art students, I don't know with other kinds of students, official uniform is actually Uniqlo. Everybody wears the same jacket, the same shirt, they just come in different colors. So it's somehow parang it's a go-to place. If I want something basic, nothing to think about, I go to these places. But actually, by definition, Missy, if fast fashion is all about trends, the Missy brand is all about loyalty, meaning you rely on the quality, you rely already on the brand. In my age group maybe, and maybe higher, brands like Marks & Spencer, Debenhams, and the more, how do you say this, in millennials term, maybe basics. You would rely on brands that are somewhat more expensive but are more stable in terms of design. Then lastly, you have the juniors. Junior basically is as defined, sometimes it's streetwear, but basically these are brands that don't necessarily follow the trend. This is what actually we have in the Philippines, mostly. That's why sometimes we are branded as somewhat backlaggers when it comes to trends. So because we have to understand, I don't know how many we are right now in the Philippines, but I think we're running towards the 100 million. Not all of those have access to malls to begin with. So they wouldn't know, they wouldn't be able to differentiate, and more so financially. This is very challenging for the students to understand because they would say, how come this brand is just copying this one? How come we are not in sync with the trends? Because again, explaining to them, it is not about the trends, but it's about your market and the feasibility of actually creating lines to be bought. So to give you more or less an idea how we go through that design process, in our school in particular, we have what we call design foundation courses, which I believe any art school has. So our design process starts with the elements and principles of design. This is where I will also inject what we have in our school in particular in terms of technology and practice. So elements, so begin with lines, etc. This is basic, I guess. This is an art principle. This one, shapes. Sorry. So basically, it's a study, if you think about it, it's a study of the human form. We are very lucky to have the Philippine Textile Research Institute to be a partner soon to our event in October. We are actually very much into inclusivity, which is one of the main thrusts that we had in this year's culminating activity. And as CSP, if you heard of Sinulid, we had a Sinulid prologue where we tackled inclusivity. Some of the target markets that we had, it's funny, Filipinos actually have very diverse size, and it's very ironic, we don't really have a store that caters to plus size. Because it's somehow a stigma na when you go inside plus size, ay matabayan. Di ba pwedeng mayaman lang gano'n? Anyway, we had stores before, so very challenging, even our students. And it's actually comforting to know when you go to our school, people would say fashion would be the most discriminating. But when you see our students, our plus size students, I'm not kidding, maybe size 20 or size 22, would be wearing mid-rib, confidently, strapping tough avenue people. This is not just within the school. And they don't care. So this is how strong inclusivity is in our school. We actually, other than plus size, we also had little people. We also focus on one group in particular in our last activity, focus on dwarfism, which was actually very challenging. Because challenging in the sense that, unfortunately, I don't know, good thing, maybe they're used to it, we had to use children's mannequin to display and practice and the students to develop the dress form. Maybe through, again, the partnership with PTRI, we can, in the future, we can really find a particular process that can cater to these special needs. Even when we were asked actually to buy a specific dress form already for them, the best we were able to find was the adjustable dress form, but nothing for the height. So anyway, then space, again, this is something to do with the body at the same time, combining texture. This is where textile comes in. We are actually the biggest fashion program in the Philippines. Right now, we have around 400 students from Frosh to senior. And I believe, we have the most extensive textile design course where, in fact, our main professor is actually, used to be also part of the PTRI. So one thrust that we have is in all our culminating activity, it's a given fact that it's very difficult, it's very challenging to look for materials here in the Philippines. So one requirement, which the students really find difficult, but again, later on find fulfilling, is to create their own surface design, which I will explain later. So color, of course, this is something to do with the trend and the size of the person or the shape for that matter. We play around. Now this has something to do with textile also. It's very challenging when there's a certain trend and we cannot find that particular color of the fabric here. So here comes our PTRI expert, and some of our students would really go to the agency. Of course, we would encourage them to use natural or organic dyes, but unfortunately, the fabrics available also in the market are quite challenging. My frustration is very much intense because some of my students had to rely this last graduation that we had just 2 weeks ago. I had a student who got delayed because he ordered a fabric from Hong Kong. Given the communication barrier, time barrier, custom barrier, it arrived almost, my God, 1 week before it was supposed to be sold. So very challenging. Because again, the color is not available. So sorry, just to give you an idea. So principles, of course, this is where diversity is what you play along also. This is the theme actually in our last fashion show. When you see diversity, we wanted them, granted that we have limited resources already when it comes to materials. We taught them now, how can you now use upcycling or maybe other materials that can be used such as plastic, such as metal. It's very challenging though, because sometimes they would think, Miss, are we using trash? Not necessarily. That connotation that actually they don't want the typical, I don't like it to look like a science project gone mad. It's very challenging. So we have to explain it to them. There are ways by manipulating these materials. Later on, I'll show some of the outputs that they had. So rhythm also, I don't know how to go back. Anyway, there, in terms of repetition, etc. This is where we practice fabric manipulation. We have actually, I am actually glad that my school right now is very much into investing in technology. Do we do it manually? Believe it or not, are you familiar with smacking? We had a student who had actually a special need, who I guess it was a therapy for her. She did the smacking by hand. So, of course, she only finished 6 inches. We weren't expecting much, but at least she did it. Then in the last exhibit also, I hope you would come in SM Aura. It's mounted until Monday. Another thing she did, she knitted the whole garment. And this is for plus size, by the way. So imagine how big it is. So anyhow, so emphasis, of course. Then, just to teach you how, this is a new, but it's not actually new, but somewhat people still find it new, but people in fashion know that it's not just yet that accepted in the Philippines. That's where we have styling. Styling is a new, not so new as I've said, what do you call this, job that's out in the open. This is where also we try to encourage upcycling and recycling, sometimes through the construction, depending on the team of the students. So this is a new thing in the Philippines, but just to show you, for example, in terms of scale, using big against small, and using small against big, something to that effect. We also teach this to the students. Again, it boils down to taste. Because as I've said, some might find it, hey, the bag's so outrageous. But can you say outrageous in front of Chanel? Diba? No. So yun, harmony, putting things together. Again, this is where we actually go back to them. It is now where this is where your creativity will come out. Harmony. You see, you'll be working with trash. But surprisingly, when they finally come up with their project, it's made out of recycled, all the recycled junk they could find in their house. Putting it together, they come up with such an art piece. So anyhow, in PNILD, we are very much into technology, which I'm very much comfortable also with, given my academic degrees. We actually subscribe to a trend forecasting website, WGSN. This is actually used by retailers. All of our students have access here. So at least we are updated every so often what's happening out there. It's all, to begin with, we're already challenged because we're from the academe. We rely heavily on what's out there. Though, of course, the generation right now is very different. They're very Instagram, Facebook, and everything savvy. In fact, as the professors are more inclined to do more studies online than them, because we are the ones from the books. But so trends like this would help. Another is this coming September, we're going to have a field trip in Paris. We're going to be joining Premier Vision just to be updated. These are the challenges being again in the academy. So, but Premier Vision, if you're unaware, it's like the mother of all trend forecasting websites. So this is how we also try to make the help in a way, not just the students but the industry to be abreast, to be different from other counterparts, not just in the Philippines but in Southeast Asia. Because they know that we are very much Western, but we always want the students to understand, to be able to intertwine Western trends with their own organic inspirations. So later I will describe again. So these are just some of the trends we pick up from WGSN. The logo I unfortunately cut, but they offer us up to I think 2 or 3 years advanced trends. So even technology, in fact, I'm happy that I have heard the speaker from Lauren. We are about to purchase a digital printer this coming school year. So later maybe. So this is what I'm talking about, surface design. In the Philippines, through Miss Lulu Cangan, actually, she's, we consider the neat queen. So, it's actually a challenge to create your own fabric or material. Because to begin with, it's the largest part of your design, the material itself. So, we tried to teach the students. It's kind of hard because it's whole garment most of the time. We teach them what we call surface design. So some of the examples right now, of course, the narrative surface is very in, what we call statement prints. Just an example, as basic as tie-dye. Can you imagine our student when we say, oh, you do tie-dye? They always think tie-dye, the one in the beach. It's not always like that. We have to tell them, no, these are the examples, there are different ways of manipulating the dye. Then using different kinds of inspirations as prints. So examples also. Again, very challenging. Imagine students saying floral, the tone of their voice like floral. Parang it's an insult to the flora and fauna. But when they see how it can be translated and how it is used by designers, it changes again their mind. And of course, they can make their own patterns. We have also a software where they can design their textile. It's Lectra. So we have Kaledo in also our school, so they can design their own textile. The one reason we want to purchase a digital printer more so. So again, illusion. So prints. So abstract, this is actually one of the trends right now. Using of colors, etc. Graphics. Then, okay, this is actually not my students' work, but these are the example what we said. There are inspirations that they take from, and how do they translate it to garments? So we explain it to them in a way. This is actually something I picked up from the internet, but somehow this is how they more or less have an idea. Some would take it literal, but again, it's all about combining all the elements and principles. So there. Baroque. This one is by Victor and Rolf. This one actually, for example, this one, the challenge of this is in sewing, not in pattern. So far, in all the schools I've been to, this is the most difficult to achieve. So patterns, we also do embroidery. This is also how we help the industry. We seek how do you say this? Artisans, like embroiderers, or students would go as far as Lumban. Tai-tai is also an option when it comes to labor. Then we try to look for good bidders. The industry itself, the supply chain, is pretty hard to manage. It would be very helpful actually if we had like a resource center, a go-to center. Most of the time, it's a bit easier for them actually to look for suppliers internationally than locally. So this is an example how WGSN translates the material together with the silhouette and mixing now, putting all things together. So there. Then, okay. Now, as a final a final output for the design process. Design process, not jumping to the actual prototype sampling. We have what we call the mood board, but because this one sets the direction for all that follows, the design of the store, the number of pieces they should make, etc. So this is a conceptual mood board. This is actually a template I had when I was still studying abroad. So you choose certain pictures or inspirations that inspire you. That's why usually a designer, an artist has a camera or a journal with them, so they can take down all the random inspiration they get in their everyday life. And then from there, they extract the colors, more or less an idea. So going back, from also the feel of the picture, for example, it feels soft, it feels light, it feels romantic. So therefore, it's translated to pieces that are soft, romantic, as I've said, and boils down also to the fabric choices. What are the soft fabrics? Chiffon, silk, etc. So it's actually a process. So another concept, Studio 54, it's disco, it's slick, it's shiny. So some of the pieces in colors, I'm sorry you couldn't see it, black, and actually this one I think is white, I forgot what color it was. Then the texture that they can use. And then, now this is another take of how merchandising, apart from design, as I've mentioned, how merchandising comes in. This is where we explain to the students, you don't necessarily, this is where somewhat the issue arises. There are times, most of the brands, we have to be blunt about it. Some brands would pick the designs from other brands, unfortunately. It's faster because of time, etc. There are some that they would design themselves. But it's like putting it together, it's like styling, putting it together and creating a collection out of different inspirations, may it be from other brands or from design inspiration. So here you would see there's already an actual photo of what the garment will look like, and then the colors where the garment will be produced, what colors will the garment be produced, and then the kind of fabric. This itself, as I've said, this is the end to the design process. After this one, this is when we go to the next stage, which is production. This is where our sewing, pattern making classes comes in. But nevertheless, maybe you want to be a fashion designer for couture or ready-to-wear brand, ready-to-wear line, they still go through the same process. So also, this goes hand in hand, what accessory will go with the garments that they have designed. The challenging part here, although we have a lot of craftsmen in the South or wherever, in terms of quantity, etc., it's still challenging. And in fact, the hardware, specific hardwares are very hard to find, that some would resort still from imported suppliers. Again, it boils down to time element. So for short, we have to buy it as it is. So we have buying trips outside. That's what we teach also the students. That's why they also have field trips sometimes in Hong Kong, just to see what the nearest options are. Then just to show you what we had in the last 6 months in school. So our last fashion show was Sinulid Outdoor Translation. The screen is very white, but this is actually made out of satin. Then the surface was painted with some, I think it's not acrylic, plastic-based resin, to put it up. So all the designs for our Sinulid this year is very exploratory. We wanted them to go beyond. This time it was very challenging because, as I've said, we wanted them to work on the materials. Okay, then this one was digitally printed. This one, if I'm not mistaken, was made through our sublimation machine in school. We have one, but it's pretty small. So as you see, the space is limited. In this one, digital printed again. In this one, painted, hand painted. Some of the treatments that have been done, as you can see from a distance, it looks one full, but these are actually scraps of rib meat put together. Then this one, if I may crawl out, this one, specific again, inclusivity. This is a line for children with special needs. If you touch the clothing, it's actually toys. Because, for example, children with ADHD tends to fidget. So they have something to hold, to control their emotions. Even children with autism, something to play with. So they can get this without destroying also, of course, the garment. So that's the main thrust of this brand. This one actually was some of the pieces done made out of plastic. If you look closely, this is made out of big Lego, the Mega Blocks. Then this one, unfortunately, the picture doesn't do justice. The plastic that you really buy, that you really use, the non-reusable plastic, the one that's very thin, used in the market. And this one is balloons. This was, you remember the issue in Okada when they used too many balloons. So this was the inspiration. That was the inspiration behind. And of course, some of our works. It's okay. No need to play. Thank you.
Hi, thank you, Miss Bennett, for that very wonderful presentation. And the color is actually not that on her original presentation. It's like 60% different. 64.5% different. But in any case, you can download the presentation of our speakers at our website. We will post it there, so please come and visit at www.ptri.usd.gov.ph. And I remember attending Sinulit one time. I actually saw real-size women, plus-size women, wearing swimsuit, two-piece swimsuit, and it is something very good. But at the back of my head, I was like, why is this supposed to be good? This is supposed to be normal. So we should not be actually talking about that is actually good and like that. But well, we're not there yet, but I think we are moving on the right direction, right? So okay, for our next speaker, last but definitely not the least. Okay, so our last speaker is a graduate of Bachelor of Textile Engineering in Donghua University, China. And she earned Master of Business Management in Tsinghua University, and he has 10 years of experience in textile machinery, 20 years experience in 3D body scanning, and apparel made-to-measure technology. Here to talk about three-dimensional body scanning for mass customization in the apparel industry, the Director of Beijing Litech Company Limited, Director Richard Lee Ko Zhao.
Hello, good afternoon. I'm Richard Zhao, and my last attendance of this presentation in the 3D body scanning technology for the apparel industry. Okay, I just make it short and like to show more videos. So, okay, so why the famous company for 3D body scanning and 3D software. So, all target to help the industry digitize their business. We are talking about a lot about the industry 4.0. Actually, we can see the key Let me go back. Actually, for the key of the Industry 4.0 is to digitalize the process. To digitalize the process is a digital transformation. So what is, actually this, I believe this word is very important, to replace the physical workflow by digital data processing. In the traditionally, we process the physical samples, fabric, the material, everything. Now, for the Industry 4.0, the key mission is to transform this process by replacing the physical workflow with digital data. So our mission is to how to digitalize everything in this process. So I go back to, okay, and a few words about the digitalize. In the past, we try our best to do the digitalize in 2D, like 2D grading, pattern making, and cutter planning, and of course in the production side. And now with the requirement of the, let's say, the industry, and also with the improvement of the technology, particularly the computer science. So we are now focusing more on 3D now. So this is some word about the apparel industry. Of course, every day is changing. The world is changing from target group to need group. That means you produce what the market needs. And the new fashion template in the cities, what they call online platform, is also mentioned by the speaker. And the trading way also changed and transparent. So all this need technology, let's say, for Industry 4.0 to integrate all stakeholders. Just now we mentioned the PLM, the product life management, to make all the players on the same platform, so everyone know what they are doing. Of course, conversation of digital to physical products. That means for the garment, of course, you have to finally produce the garment. But this production, we like to make it happen as closer as to the customer side. Yeah, not in the beginning. So from the beginning, from the design, from everything, it's digital. And finally, at the end, you produce. So that saves a lot of, you can imagine the transportation, is called communication. Okay, so then we go back to the word for made to measure, or we can say the customization or personal manufacturing. The traditional way, maybe we have the experience of go to the shop and make to measure the clothes. Of course, you have a tailor, usually the very old tailor with a tape and take the measurements, and then the tailor will create the patterns with the chopstick or sometimes with the cardboard, and then cutting the fabric with the scissors and sewing the scissors, and then this is the half finish of the clothes. You have to try on 1 time or 2 times and modify again, and 2 or 3 times, and then finally deliver the suit or the shirt you need. And the challenge is very obvious. It's time consuming. In the past, I think typically if you are manufacturing a jacket, a suit, it takes 1 to 3 months. And the cost is also very high because we rely on the very experienced tailors. So for the shirt, more or less $150 US. The suit, minimum, not maximum. This sometimes expensive at $2,000 US to manufacture, to make to measure suits. Of course, but the process is complex, and because of that, the style is always old-fashioned. You do not have a lot of choice, and of course you have to compromise on the fitting. So, because of the old traditional way, let's say the made-to-measure business is what's a small-scale business. Only a small group of VIP persons, high-level, high-income person can afford to purchase this. And then this is also the reason that made-to-measure business never become a main business for the fashion industry. So now what happened with the new technology? We try to digitalize everything. So from the human body, before we measure the body, now we using the 3D body scanner to digitalize the human. Here you see that you finally you make the garment for what? For the people to wear. So you have to, first you have to digitalize the human body. What we call the avatar. Avatar is the digital data format for the human body. Secondly, for the measurement, you take with the tape and then write on the paper and things. So now it's all automatically taken from the digital avatar. Third, before you have to create a pattern using the paper, cardboard. It's a very typical tool in the fashion industry. Now, of course, most of the factories are using the CAD system to make it 2D digital pattern. For the fabric, you mentioned that the designer designed is treated by the supplier the fabric. Now we have that tool to digitalize the fabric. Not only design the fabric in digital type, and also you can scan the fabric into digitalize. Of course, finally, for the fitting. Now, because you already have the digital person, digital pattern, and digital fabric, then you can have the digital garment. You can try the garment on the digital avatar instead of trying the real garment on your body. So this is the way that the new technologies help to optimize or we can see the digitalize the whole process for made to measure. Of course, the benefit is also it's very fast. It's from even 2 hours to make a made to measure clothes, from 2 hours to maximum now 7 days. It's very fast compared to 1 to 3 months before. The cost is also very low because you do not rely on the tailor. You do not rely on the person using the physical cutting. You do not need to send a person to the cutting to measure, and you do not need to try the clothes several times. So you need less labor. Of course, you need less transportation and less try on time, and then finally less return. If you deliver clothes and fitting, you will return and modify it again. So it's less return and less fabric waste. Then finally your made to measure clothes become much cheaper. So in general, with the new technology, we can become the made to measure business to a real, what we call mass customization business. Before the customization is a small scale. Now we can see the mass customization business. And very important, it become a standardized production procedure. Of course, it's a new innovation for the industry. So how it works? First, you have the body scanner, and the people go inside, and you scan the person in 10 seconds. Then you can have a virtual yourself here. That means that in the computer, you have yourself stored in the computer. It's a digital virtual of yourself. And secondly, you can take the software take automatically all the measure from you. Before, you can only take maybe 10 or 20 measurements because you need a person to do it. Now, the software can take thousands of measurements from the body. Then all these measurements go to the what we call MTM pattern system. It automatically modifying and creating a new pattern just fitting for yourself. This time, for this procedure, before, if you are working with a person, it will take 3 to 4 hours, even sometimes 1 day for the skilled or the skilled tailor. Now it only takes 1 second. Then you have the virtual try-on. You can see, okay, I had the try-on, I find the sleeve too long, I prefer have a shorter sleeve, and whatever your preference is, the system will immediately modify the pattern and show you what it looks like. Then of course you can choose a lot of other things. You can choose the style, you can choose different colors, accessories, fabric, button, everything you can try immediately. You can see on the computer. You can see every alteration you like without manufacture anything. Yeah. This is only the simulation in the computer. Then finally, after you decide, okay, I like this, then you can show it in a live stream and you can send it to your mobile phone and immediately your customer or yourself can have a look at it. Okay, what? Okay, the quick issue from the you just inside the body scanner and the scanner person, you can have it. You see that you can choose the fabric you like and automatically creating the pattern. Immediately you have a look at the cloth yarn you like to. And you like is just showing the line and finish. So you okay, I like that. And do it again. Okay. This is the one shop in China. They are using body scanner to scan the person. There's an element I calculate, and then you choose the style you like. The software automatically create the pattern, and then immediately you can have a look at the 3D using and your mobile. So I like it and I purchase it. Okay, this is how far is it? This is 1,000. Actually, this for my experience, because yesterday I was in Shanghai. We had an exhibition there. We put the body scanner and the cutting machine, sewing machine on the show. So you see, Before I come here, I found okay, I need a t-shirt, I need a shirt. Well, it's a more serious conference. I need a shirt. They did a body scan, of course. The body scan, they make it more beautiful, yeah, and 100% self perform. You go inside and then you click on the screen. Okay, I like to scan, and then you scan. You scan, and then you get a barcode. You scan the barcode. You choose on your mobile what style I like. For example, I choose one shirt. Then on the side there's the automatic cutting machine. From the cutting machine you have the sewing machine, pressing machine. I get a shirt which I'm yeah. Yesterday morning before I leave here, I think okay I should have a shirt. And then do 1 hour. In the exhibition we sell this shirt for RMB 99 yuan. That means about 12 US dollars. Made to measure. We still have profit on that. Yeah. So you see, you can deliver. If you can imagine if you go to the shopping mall, or maybe you have want to have some food. Okay, you find 3D body scanner there, and you can scan it, and then you can get your shirt in 1 hour, and very cheap. Why it's cheap? Because the fabric only maybe 50% of the cost. All the other is automatically by the machine and only sewing. So that's still possible to make profit from this. Okay, so with the body scanner and the 3D technology, we can also create what we call the micro factory. You can review again. Okay. This is what Alan introduced also. It's connected to the digital printer. You make the design, you scan process. Okay. You make the design. Then you use the digital printer, you can print it out. Yeah, we also have a lot of program, we call it DOST-PTRI, to print it out the pattern, you see the pattern. And use the automatic cutting machine to cut it out. Of course, finally you have to use the worker to do it. The sewing machine. Okay, so this you see with the body scanner, with the 3D technology, you can not only create a fitting clothes, also you can choose, you can anticipate, design what adding pattern, adding color or texture you like with the let's say digital printer. Okay, also it creates a new way of shopping. Okay, this is the shop in Germany for Adidas. They have a concept, new concept for shopping. So then you go inside and get it scanned. Then you choose the fabric, and you can show and simulate on the computer. Then all the data is transformed to the, of course, this is knitting, they will transform to the knitting machine. The knitting will manufacture the sweater based on your body measurements. And then you have it. we call it for you. And also this will create a lot of new ways of design communication. Yeah, this is what we saw in last year's exhibition. With the body scanner, we digitalize the person, and with the machine you can digitalize the fabric and digitalize everything. Like, you can show the clothes, every design on the large screen. So your customer or you have a meeting with the designer, everything is digital. You can do it on the screen. What we call a digital showroom. You can show the story. Even you can print your body shape on the mobile. You can try on. Okay.
So where's the guy?
Okay, so for the body scan, we can do a lot of things. One of the things we are doing is what we call the site survey. This is what PTRI is going to start in Philippines also. Actually, so far we use the body scanner already do the site survey in the world. Like in the United States, in Europe, in China, in India already start. We scan a large number of people to collect to do the survey of the national person. You know the people's body shape is quite different in Philippines, in Vietnam, in China, in Japan, in US, and in Europe. It's different. If you want to export or you want to supply that market or you want to make the garment for your own country, you have to know your people. What the shape like, what the body like. To do this, you need to do the site survey, we call it. So we already do this site survey in the world. Just one example, for example, we call it inside Germany, we do it, and then you see that compare to the old idea, you find the body shape of the lady only 0.35 inches higher, not that much. But the breast, the waist, the hip is bigger. And for the man, the same. So you will find that the current body shape of the people is quite different with what you think. Also size Italy. So size North America already completed and the result will publish. Okay, with all this data, what we can do it? Let's see. We can set up or we can optimize the size table we are using now. Let's say this is the population with your data. You collected this is the work, this is chest, this is the width. You see your population is here, your market is here. But your size table, you know, for the fashion industry, you need a size table. Like I buy a shirt, you have the XL, L, small, middle, and small. This is the size table you are using for production. From here, you will see, okay, I have a size table too big. None of my population, my people can fit that. And also too small. In middle, we have a lot of people here, but we have only 3 sides. So with it, you have to optimize. Let's say you can remove this, you can remove this, because this very few people like it. Maybe they are only making mirror. You do not need it. You can add more size here to fit your key. This is one of the main usage of the data you are collecting for the fashion industry. Yeah, it's very important to set up. Then you, of course, you also need to, you can understand what the body shape like you have is A-type, Y-type, and rectangular, and different type of airport type of body shape. You have a lot of different types. So with this data, you can analyze the data and then know what your market is like. And it is very important for the export also. Just imagine that you are a fitting company, you are manufacturing garments for the local industry. Now you want to export to Europe. You know, the body shape is quite different from the European people, quite different with the Philippine people. You need to know the data. On the contrary, the same. If let's say a US company, they want to export garments to Philippines, they have to know the body, the type and body shape of the Philippine people. Okay. So this is what we call that. Okay, of course, for the body scanner, you collect data, you can also use a lot of other things. For example, you can have what we call the ergonomic study evaluation to help design the car. Yes. And for medical and health, yeah, for example, you can. Yeah, this is the one for the pregnant lady. We measure that the lady and to predict the health of the children. And for the sports, of course, a lot of sports are using data. And also you can use the 3D printer to print it out. So there are many applications you can use 3D body scanner. So we rely on you to show more. Okay, thank you for your
Mr. Zhao for that presentation. And related to the Human Solutions Technology, I would like to call the Director Celia B. Anumba to give us an overview of what PTRI is actually doing in connection to this technology.
Guys, if you have time, please visit our booth downstairs. We're in 2 locations. This is the Perfect Fit. Perfect Fit is our short term for the Textile Product Development Center. And we would like to show you a video that will sort of introduce to you what this technology is. We are very excited because this has a lot of promise. It offers a lot of opportunities. To begin with, our key goal, as I mentioned earlier, is the integrated textile product development. Integrated product development system, which means from the time you are scanned to the time that you are measured, to the time that you make the patterns and all, you will be able to do this in a very seamless fashion. So please enjoy first the video, and we will welcome your questions or comments or insights later.
Research Institute, PTRI, the premier textile research and development arm of the Department of Science and Technology, aims to develop definitive textile with its sole purpose is to promote research. The PTRI introduces the PTRI training body scanner, a tool that will help in the innovation and development of the Philippine textile industry. With the rise of the Philippine fashion and clothing industry, Philippine designers, manufacturers, and artists still follow different global pricing standards taken from foreign countries, since the Philippines doesn't have its own built for the Philippine office industry. With the PTRI training body scanner, it's nice to have a pricing standard that has a perfect fit for every Filipino. For specifically of textile development. Textile product development center is managing an integrated production system. Perfect fit is the short name as the quality textile product development center. It really is the precision. It's at the core of what we're trying to accomplish. In this manner, you are now what I mentioned electronically. Your ability to make better products is amazing. You can then use that as your basis for really calling a small for the Philippines. Because right now we're calling it experience from other countries. It can then be translated into a paper pattern. The paper pattern can then be plotted and printed. So long-term paper is our financial sizing system. And the longer term, you will be able to now correlate the shape and the size of the needle according to their
Kasi ako sa Textile is a business. Sa rin mo public servant, yung kailangan ko kasi dami.
Okay, good afternoon everyone. So at this moment, we will invite our speakers to please come front for the panel discussion this today. I know it's actually break time, but due to lack of time, I hope that you don't mind, that our audience will be asking you questions while they are eating and you will be here sitting down, and later on we will serve your snacks. So, okay, we invite on stage Director Edunga, Mr. Halchin, Miss Bennett, and Mr. Zhao. And of course, Dr. Atienza is still here with us and can still provide insight, especially in the topics related to artificial intelligence and Industry 4.0. And I hope that you've jotted down or taken notes of the questions you have for our speakers. If you have any, please give it to our ushers so they can give it to me and I can ask the questions. Or you can approach the two microphones in front of you or at the back of you.
May pocket na siya. Tanong natin, pwede bang may kasama?
Okay, very good. Okay, so the audience can actually participate by giving your comments and questions directed to our speakers, or every one of them can actually respond to your questions. So let me start with the question. I really feel like this is like a pageant contest. Okay, so we all know that the industry of textile is highly labor intensive, especially the garment production. So, will the Industry 4.0 run counter-employment generation? If not, what competencies are needed if the textile and garment industry move towards the Industry 4.0? So, who would like to first answer that question? Maybe our speakers from the industry?
I think right now the textile industry in the Philippines is not very strong. One reason I know of is because of our high electricity rates. So that's preventing us from putting up factories here in the Philippines. One of the things that probably we can do is to do conversion. That is a given limitation right now. So what we do is we import materials from other countries like China. What we can probably try to do is to do converting. So earlier I showed some technologies wherein we can import raw materials, plain white fabric, and then we have, I think, very creative, brilliant designers here in the Philippines who can come up with unique designs, and then we convert the fabrics localized with our own designs here in the Philippines. So if we're able to adapt newer technologies, I think that can generate a lot of output, business, and then that would in turn result to employment.
Okay, so it also presents an interesting challenge because at the end of the day, we need to have that the competence of the Secretary mentioned it earlier. The ability to work with computer systems, for example, the ability to do the CAD/CAM. We realized that in the exercise that we were undertaking, in the capacity building that we did for the 3D body scanning technology, those who do not have an appreciation of pattern making, I answered this earlier, you need to have an appreciation of pattern making, because even if you can have this system, it's electronic and all, but if you don't know how patterns work and how they are derived, you will not have an easy time in manipulating or working on this. On the other hand, even if you know how to make patterns, but if you don't understand how the system works, so you are not literate as far as the computer systems are concerned, it also presents a conundrum. So it will be an opportunity, a wonderful opportunity to actually scale up or to bring the level of education geared or adhered to accept or adapt or embrace computer literacy. We have to be comfortable with data. We have to be comfortable with how to manipulate those sets. So there is that interesting opportunity and challenge at the same time.
Hello. Okay, so I think related to Mr. Hao Chin comment regarding the technology that instead of bringing it here, we can develop it here. My question is the technologies that are already available outside. So how are we looking at investment framework in terms of bringing those technologies here in the Philippines? So in terms of policies, for example, tax, incentives, for example. And if we cannot do that, if the challenge is really tough, and we cannot do that in a short term, what are our competencies to actually develop it here in our country in terms of human resource ability and capability?
Some of these technologies are very complex. The development of, let's say, direct-to-fabric printing, it's quite complex. The one that I showed earlier was actually developed in Israel. So it's quite complex. So in terms of, let's say, if we're hoping to develop it locally, it might take a long time. You mentioned earlier, we'd like to be able to bring some of these technologies. It's quite costly. So the government, if they can support companies that are willing to invest in these technologies, I think that would benefit a lot of the small and medium enterprises here. For example, I know that we have a lot of designers who have who want to be able to try out their own collections, pocket collections, small capsule collections, but they're unable to do it because they think of a fabric pattern, but then if they have it made in China, the minimum quantity is like 2,000 yards, right? So that's really difficult to meet. If you're going to only make a collection that's good for like one off or maybe a dozen pieces per style, so that's going to be very difficult. So I think the advent of digital technology is something that will help the SMEs today, we need to probably better promote it so that we can get support from the government as well in terms of having these technologies locally.
It is also the government's intention to actually bring in technologies that are disruptive, that will actually sort of inspire or encourage innovation, and not just that, real actual enterprise. And so we're going to be looking to Richard for the micro factory that he spoke of. We will be looking at those possibilities because in fact, we had talked about it. We want to see small batch production. We're going to be looking at the ability to help prototype so that there could be quicker design innovations and product development. So those are things that are going to help us to spread and inspire. And so we need to get private sector collaboration, and I just mentioned to Alan earlier, is the government has a system under the USD. Take a look at the Science for Change program, and we will be very happy to see what we can collaborate on together or with together. So I think in this role already, we have a number of things that we would like to see happen.
Mr. Zhao, how was your experience finding that equipment from China here in the Philippines? What are the challenges? What do you think are the things that we should be doing so that it will be easier?
Actually, when working on this technology for more than 20 years, from Germany, I began from Germany 3 years ago, from Germany, Japan to China. The same thing that because the technology and the equipment is very expensive, and also it's complex. You need the human resource, the right person to work on that. Not every private company afford that. So that's the thing we are really now thinking that the government encourage organization like PTRI to do it. Because you have the person, you have the report, and then you can show an example to the industry to use the high technology. Of course, it provides a platform, I think, to train the industry.
I think this is also very related because with all the advent and technologies right now, I think the academic sector needs to also be abreast with all this, with all what is happening right now in this field or in this sector. So there is actually a question from Melody Francisco from Polytechnic University of the Philippines, and the question is, how can the fashion design education in the Philippines improve, and should new courses or programs be provided in order to innovate and be more sustainable? So maybe Ms. Bennett and also Dr. Atienza can give their response to this.
That's a very good question actually. Right now, we have been trying to come up with a textile design curriculum. But the very challenging part to begin with is actually to defend it first, of course, to the school and then to CHED, etc. Is the possibilities beyond after textile design? Is there employment? Is there even a textile industry to begin with? So that itself, that's what, for now, of course, we're working along the fashion design and merchandising framework, and by enhancing that supply chain possibilities that we have here in the Philippines, that would actually validate more the need for textile design as a course. We don't want to be always be given that reason that no, we have limited materials, no, we have that. That's why in our school, other than purchasing new technology, which again, when we're talking about technology, actually it's a very challenging factor for our students. We keep on giving the best technology in school. But when they finally practice, so where do we go now? That's always the question. We will say, buy your own. But that is so expensive, obviously. So the challenges, but we don't want them to be hindered by the fact that it does not exist in the Philippines. Right now, of course, as I've mentioned when I was talking, the first option is to outsource it abroad, but at least to have the know-how, I think that's a beginning for us.
And so how about the interplay of the design and also the things artificial intelligence? I think these two fields will be very much connected towards moving in this direction of Industry 4.0.
I'll answer also the first question about the unemployment problem. I think you should not be scared of AI. Instead, you should see it as an opportunity. And with regards to unemployment, it's going to happen definitely. But if you are willing to adopt, you will be able to catch the first low-hanging fruit in terms of opportunity. Put it this way: in the past, you know, the job of a switchboard, there was a job called switchboard operator. I don't know if you have heard of that. And then it was replaced by digital circuits. So that means there was some mass unemployment in terms of, you know, people who are doing switching non-telephone calls. Okay, but there was no problem then. They were able to adopt. Okay, and we did not have a Great Depression, right? And then there was also a job, I think before the alarm clock was invented, there was a job wherein your job is just to wake up the earliest, okay? And then you go around the village to wake up the rest because it's time for them to, you know, wake up and go to work, okay? That was before the invention of alarm clock. Now we have AI, so it's going to create a new types of opportunities. I think you should not be worried about unemployment, but you should be worried about how to take advantage of it and catch the opportunity, the long. In terms of academic improvement, okay, this is hard, okay. This is a culture that I've been pushing in UP, and not everyone in UP, I think, believes in what I believe in. Because for me, we work with UC Berkeley, and when you work with UC Berkeley, you have to be, you know, you get stressed because they're one of the best in the world, and you have to catch up. You cannot slack off, or you'll be embarrassed of what you're doing, okay? So in that case, whenever we work with them, we make sure that whatever we're working on is also one of the world's best in terms of output. So that means I always stress that out to my students, that whenever you do research, make sure that it gets accepted to the best conference in the world in the field of AI. So it's hard. So it takes them years to generate output, but I'm not after quantity, I'm after quality. So I'm very patient as long as you produce something that is of high impact. So in terms of adapting, so I was a bit stressed really, because I need to develop new courses that is at par with the world's best. That's the reason why earlier, it's not a blog. I was able to come up with a new book, okay? Primarily because I adapted with this pressure to be at par with the world's best. Okay.
Thank you, Dr. Atienza. And we have a question from the audience. Please, your name and affiliation.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. I'm Jeff from Jeff Handicraft and PDA Industry from Aklan, and I'm also part of the Fashion Revolution. So my question here towards what really the objective, was it really to promote the Philippine textile, and knowing that the textile from Philippines is, most of it is hand-woven, and of course embracing the technology is very important, just like what the presentation have done. But then my question is, was it really applicable to the textile in Philippines using this technology? Like for example, knowing the nature of the fibers that we use, is digital printing is applicable, is, you know, And part of it also is the conversion of the fabric, like the scanning is also important. But my question is, was it really the Philippine textile that we are promoting and using the technology? Because I'm worried that knowing the nature of the fabric may not be applicable on some part, but in the execution and conversion, maybe some will be applicable. So that's my question, ma'am. What are we really promoting? Was it the Philippine textile with the application of the technology, or it's important to adapt, but I'm coming from the artisan and I want to maintain the culture and to promote the tradition. Are we ready?
The title of our forum today is Textiles 4.0. Of course, in our earlier episodes, we talked about Philippine textiles and focusing on traditional textiles. But when we look at the swath of textiles in general, we really are looking at not just the cultural and traditional practices. It really includes, that's why earlier I mentioned, we're just talking about one aspect of our textile conversation, because when you consider it in our research and development, we also have also industrial textiles, we have medical textiles, so there are technical textiles. We're not touching those. We're only touching on textiles in general, as technologies around the world are existing and are available. The goal is, how can we adapt? Because certainly, and I think this is a serious concern for many, we may have our traditions and our cultural practices, but to what extent can we apply improvement? Is it open to improvement? Are you open to embracing whatever is possible? I mentioned to you, for example, that the weaving, not just the mechanized, I was referring to the pattern, the draft patterns, where you can already archive and do a library of the patterns that are existing, and so you can do this for generations to come. It will be available. That is certainly applicable to traditional textiles. That will really enable and preserve and conserve cultural traditions. So this whole conversation here is, what can we do with traditional textile? For example, we're talking about better scanning. One of the elements, and this is already something that they have written to us about, it's a full letter of intention. I had said this earlier, if the quality of the fabric is very good and lovely and wonderful, the stitching is fantastic, the style is wonderful, if the fit is bad, do you think any of those three matters? They don't matter. So one of our earliest guys who came to us is asking us, help us with the fit of the product that we are making coming from traditional textiles. This is a very concrete value addition to the work that is done in that front. Because certainly, the product that we make into the traditional sphere is not limited to bags, it's not limited to wall hangings, it's not limited to other traditional pieces. You should be able to contemporize this. We should be able to bring this to modern pieces so that it does not look like it is so traditional that I will only wear this to special occasions. I want our fabric to be worn every day, but it should not look like it wear what they call before costume. Right? It should not. It should really have a more contemporary feel to it. So I hope that's that's just one, because there are other technologies that we should be looking at. But this certainly, the one that we spoke of, then take a look at the digital printing. Take a look at, we have projects that are looking at natural dyes as inks and pastes and pigments, and one project that we're particularly looking at is how to use natural dyes and bring it to CMYK comparison, so that you can then do the direct garment printing or direct fabric printing. They are there. These are projects, they are not fully blown, they are in the pipeline. We are actually, the secretary mentioned earlier that we're looking to have a balik scientist. He has 3 decades of experience in development of not just the printing technology itself, but also in inks, in formulation, as well as in equipment designs, and even plant management and plant design. So all of these projects are in the pipeline. You help and pray, because we're so many. I mean that, the opposite side. There's so many of us, we have to have multiple personalities. So I always say, nagpapanggap kami palagi. That's a joke. Hindi ko yung papanggap. We actually know what we're doing. But in terms of competence in, certain media, whatever, management, event, and PR, yan, nagpapanggap kami dyan. Marketing, nagpapanggap kami dyan. But we have multiple personalities already. So you help us in that department. Yeah, I hope that answers the question.
Can I add na? Earlier, I appreciate yung question mo. The examples actually that I gave were international. But actually, the purpose of that is to show how we can adapt technology from international arena to the Philippine setting. So for example, digital printing is already being done on Marong. One of our customers, for instance, he prints on pinya fabric. So that obviously comes from Philippines. It adds value, exactly. So typically, let's say if you don't have any print on it, you only sell it for so much. But with the print, it adds a lot of value. We've also printed on local kacha. That's also another material that we've tested. I've heard of, we talked about abaca and other local fabrics. We can explore testing and printing on them as well. So.
I'd like to inquire to Ms. Bennett, like how, from the artist perspective, from the creative industry perspective, how do you appreciate the innovations, like the applications now available? Is it helping you? Is it something that the artist can actually take advantage of in terms of rendering your designs?
Being fashion students, actually, the first thing that they would ask, as I began my lecture earlier, was how come the Philippines is still not a fashion capital? But one thing that we always tell them, we think it's all about the runway, but we tell them always, it's also about the DNA of the culture. So it has to be innate. It cannot be always copied. This being copied will not make it the capital at all. So what we do actually, in fact, in connection with what was asked, most of our students, we had students who came from Cotabato, etc. It's actually very challenging sometimes, to be honest, time and everything, to work on manual production of the fabric, etc. So having this technology somewhat expedites or help alleviate actually the promotion of this. Digital printing is one channel. There's been issue recently regarding cultural appropriation of some Mexican patterns in the internet. This is one thing also we are teaching the students. That's why the DNA of being a Filipino is very important. Regardless or whatever competition you reach, maybe in Europe, in the States, knowing that what the true Filipino, your true heritage is, regardless of the medium of expression you use, maybe digital printing, actual weaving, you still know your own DNA and be able to present your own identity.
Thank you, Ms. Bennett. And also we have a question from the Great Women Project, Ms. Jenny Havenosa.
Study ko naman. Then we also need to
First, we'd just like to say how we appreciate this kind of a forum, especially because we work with all the communities on the ground, and that sustainability is the core of everything we do, and the business side. And it's clear that since we're doing Great Women, not just the project, but the whole brand platform, there's a gap between the communities, production, and there's a gap in the value addition of technology. So we're just very happy to see this because it's answering what we are doing. It's answering the questions we've had. Because we're going around trying to form our own answers and we realize everyone's here. Just come together in these spaces because the issues of the community are valid, very valid, and we're standing for that. The issue of culture, sustainability, the IP part, but yes, we need the technology. So it's like, how do we plug these gaps in? So I just wanted to say how valuable this kind of a discussion, because the processes that we put together as collaborators is the innovation. That's really what it is.
Thank you. Director, would you like to respond?
I would like to thank Jeannie for that. At the end of the day, we are saying that really it's the integration of how we work together. It's a collaboration. But we really have to be integrating all of the processes because without that integration, the simple term that we call this, we're connecting the dots. So our dots have to be connected. And so far, we have so many dots, but sometimes they're all over the place. So it's a good idea to be able to connect those dots so that we really come up with one particular, the best product that we can come up with.
Thank you. Now we have actually a question regarding sustainability, upcycling, and deconstruction. I think for Ms. Bennett, the question is, how can we incorporate it in the program, specifically in fashion and design? And for the rest of our speaker is, are the technologies related to Industry 4.0 actually encourages sustainability, since actually it is our field and NSTW 2017. So can you please comment?
Actually, when I had a conversation with Ms. Celis a couple of weeks, it's somewhat there were enlightening parts. Because the new generation, I don't know what you call them, I think Generation Z, we all know that there's ukay-ukay, and it's actually now termed thrifted. So, most of our students actually, if not art students in particular, have already, we are actually happy. They thought that they are now actually somewhat, how do you say this, what's sawa in English? They had too much of fast fashion. So they want now to individualize themselves. And that's where actually the thrifted part comes in, and upcycling. There's a lot now ongoing. I know this is just shallow, or let's just say scratching the surface of sustainability, especially in terms of circular sustainability and all. But there's a big market now for second-hand items, as what Ms. Lumba has presented earlier. And this, in fact, has opened the eyes of the students na, especially in terms of textile, there are kinds of fabric that will last forever. What are the materials that can be worked on, that can be restructured, reconstructed, as simple as denim. Although it's very nice, actually the denim is made out of cotton, 100% in fact. And yet it can withstand all, how many years, I don't know, for so long. So that itself actually is already a good avenue for them to play around. So in terms of the academe, I know and I understand we have a long way yet for them to understand sustainability. But at least I think now that this new generation is somewhat aware of this, how do you say this, the concerns that they have, maybe just through design, but at least that somehow they understand the effect of fast fashion. It's a beginning also for us.
The technology right now that we are offering for the textile and garment industry, this is encourages sustainability processes. Is it sustainable? Exactly.
I'll speak from the side of digital technology. So one of the things that is being promoted is minimizing waste. So since there's very low minimum order quantity, you get to try first what design works well, and then if it works well, that's the only time that you mass produce, right? So you can do prototyping as much as you want, and then do a test run, and then if it works, that's the time that you mass produce. So you minimize the wastage that comes with immediately doing mass production. So I think from that perspective, the new technologies that are coming out today is really geared towards that. We also noticed that a lot of the global companies today, technology companies we work with, HP for instance, they're really promoting this. They're fully aligned with this one. So they, even up to the inks, so they encourage us to return the cartridges so that they can recycle the cartridges. So that's not really related to fashion, but up to that point, they're trying to be a responsible company in terms of sustainability. So in that case, in that sense, even the technologies that they produce today are geared towards sustainability. In fact, back in 2010, they deliberately ended the service life of all the technologies that were not sustainable. So in other words, they used to produce, I'm not sure if you're familiar with tarpaulin printers like solvent printing. Right? If you smell in solvent printing, it's very toxic yung amoy niya. So that's solvent inks. So before 2010, actually HP was one of the biggest producers of solvent inks because that's their main business in large format. They made a very conscious decision that, okay, we're going to shift our ink development to something that's water-based, more eco-friendly, and they stopped. Ganun. So a company like HP is very committed to green printing, and I think more and more companies are following the same path.
Okay.
I'm glad you gave that example because I think if the technology is not sustainable, we don't use it. I don't think that we should be looking at something that is not sustainable. So that was what we had wanted to indicate in our the studies that we're doing, the researches. I will just ask, the product that you're wearing, can you tell us what it is?
This is actually hand spun and hand woven silk, the piping. And this is natural fiber bleach fabric containing at least 30% pineapple.
Is that the one with the polyester blend with the pineapple?
Yes.
Okay, so just to give you an idea, they did a fantastic job with doing pineapple and polyester on the one yarn, but we will not put out that technology because we do not want the use of polyester in the single yarn. We will do it in the fabric, but not in the single yarn. So what was the decision? We use it because it's already there, it's available. But if somebody asks us to do it, it's not something that we would like to do. So just so you're aware. It was a fantastic material, we love the way it looked and felt, but if it is not sustainable, then we don't want to do this in that scale. So that's why I like that answer. If the tech is not good, we don't want to do it.
Dr. Atensi would like to comment about sustainability of novels. Okay, we have, I think we will entertain one last question from the audience due to time constraints. Afterwards, you can just approach our speakers if they still hear and ask or inquire your questions.
But that technology can only add when we can shorten the process for raw materials. The bottom line is the raw materials. The raw materials. It has been so many years that the raw materials are in there. Since the time of Philippine Revolution, the Filipinos are trying their best to have a military uniform made of Philippine from the Philippines. Now, what is the strategy or the time frame of the government in order to reach the volume that is needed to supply a stable raw materials? Let us say, do you have any projection? By this year, we could raise this so that the business aspect could at least say in the world that, okay, here's the design made in the Philippines and we could supply. Is there any strategy or time frame for that? But let us say, pineapple, by this year, this is our target. Avocado, by this year, this is our, so that the designers and those in the industry can say, okay, I will make a design of this because we can supply 1,000. I can join the contest because we could supply like this. Because whatever kind of your design, the raw materials is not enough. There's no business.
So is there somebody from business here who would like to answer that question? Yes, please, Ms. Hagalos.
Yes, right now, after 4 or 5 months of working at least with Panay, I can tell you pure cotton with us at Great Women, 130 meters, at least from 4 communities are available. We did a Christian Louboutin project. We happened to work with almost like, I think, 6 to 7 communities all around the country. We produced for him 3,000 bags. So come see us in the showroom, all of you in the Fashion Revolution, because we are coming up with this kind of real direction. So if you project from market, and I'm coming from purely market, you want to do a projection working with a Philippine system, pure cottons, I would say maybe a year and a half, we can come back with a more real clear production capacity. Right now, if you say you want half polyester, half cotton, I'll tell you which communities are available. If you want to be able to work, we want to work with more exciting fabrics. That's why we're the partner with the micro yarn facility. So projection-wise, market-wise, where are you going to sell? There. We will sell first here. So you really have to look at which market you're going for.
That's why I'm asking the projection that
Yes.
5 to 30 years. So that, on the market side or
Supply side.
If we could say that, okay, we can do like that.
And that's why we're small quantity for now. So I think we have that slowly coming together because we are the market. So we are looking at that, yes. Yeah.
Sure.
So if I could just add,
Jeannie has the wonderful opportunity of really being able to work directly with the community. She is of course on the business aspect of this, and you know, we don't mind saying that this is a for-profit business. It has to be, because the beginning part of sustainability is that it must make money or else it cannot run. So we have no problem with the profitability side. She happens to be in the distinct position of working directly with the hand-loom weaving communities all over the country. But I know where you're looking at the supply side. That's why I had to ask business, because earlier the secretary said we're looking for industrialists, we're looking for business people. At the end of the story, at the end of this whole conversation, the technology is available. There has to be business people who will come forward and say, yeah, I can use that. I want to use that. Let's work together. I will be a fiber supplier, a fiber extractor. Somebody says, okay, I will handle the conversion of that fiber into a spun yarn. The technology is readily available. But we need you to come forward and say, I will be an advocate for this. I will run this as a sustainable business operation, because you have to make money. If you don't make money, we won't see you in 2 years. We don't like that exercise. It's a waste of time. So, and it's a waste of your energy and your effort. So anyone who can convince anyone to come and do a micro-scale spinning facility, we're working with our partners in ESADU as well as the Implement Project and the DOST Region 6. We would love to be able to expand on this and really come up with more product that can be used in the regional level by many different communities, and do domestic, do exports, do international.
Yes. So with that, thank you so much to our guest speakers. And I would like to invite you to please stay here in front as we present you with our certificate of appreciation and our very, very small token of appreciation. So, let me read. So allow me to read the citation. This is actually... Okay, the Republic of the Philippines Department of Science and Technology Philippine Textile Research Institute awards this Certificate of Appreciation to our guest speaker's name for sharing his invaluable expertise and knowledge as resource speaker on the topic title during the Forum on Opportunities for the Philippine Textile and Garment Industry 4.0, given this 20th day of July 2019 at the World Trade Center Manila site, Director Celia B. Adumba, to Mr. Alan T. Houchen. Miss Christine Cheryl Y. Bennett. Mr. Richard Lee-Won Zhao. Maybe we can take a picture of all of our afternoon speakers, just very quickly, before we end the forum. Thank you. Thank you so much to our guest speakers. And at this time, we would like to invite the Chief of the Research and Development Division, Philippine Textile Research Institute, to deliver the synthesis and the closing remark. Dr. Julius L. Liaño Jr.
Good afternoon, I hope you're still okay. We will go through the same edit PPT sort of thing about the conference that we had today. So we had this morning the welcome remarks given by the director, and then we had a talk from the Executive Director of MIRDC talking about smart manufacturing and automation and interconnectedness. So he shared about his experience in Japan.
the Robot Revolution Initiative, and stressed and emphasized that Industry 4.0 does not have to include the most high-tech or advanced technologies. SMEs can also transform or conform to this industrial revolution. And then we had a talk by Professor Roel Atienza from UP Diliman on AI in fashion. And he gave us an idea about how it is really being done. And you could imagine the science that goes behind what otherwise would look a very sexy title in his talk. And he talked about artificial intelligence offering infinite permutations in designs and generation and integration, and highlighted the 3 elements needed to create successful AI in fashion. That's high performance computing, data as a fuel for this type of innovation, and scientists who actually make this work. Then we had a panel discussion followed by the keynote message from the Secretary, and he highlighted the different legal frameworks that are already in place, making innovation actually a part of our centerpiece. The Innovation Act has been signed, the Startup Innovation Act, and the amendment in the Magna Carta for Scientists. And he challenged us, particularly PTRI, in raising public awareness on the services, technologies, and opportunities that we have in the Institute. Followed by the awarding of tokens, and then we went through the talk of our director and the prospects of Philippine textiles for Industry 4.0, highlighting, as we always would say in the Institute, that yes, we have 100 million Filipinos and you don't want them walking naked, so we are there to dress them up. And discuss computerized ways to visualize, visualization, weave patterns, and the whole idea about the perfect fit project that we have. And quoted, as shown here, that Industry 4.0 is not much about the state of the art and the best and the greatest materials and equipment out there. It is how actually we could take advantage and use these ones, and how we can use fully the material that we already have. The materials means the dyes, the fibers, the fabrics that we already have in the Philippines. And then we have a talk from Mr. Alan Houchin from Nord International Distributor, who talked about industry innovations in textile production and product development. He emphasized that the fashion industry is actually changing, it's going digital, it's moving really fast. And the mega global trends show that consumers need services that can actually offer shorter runs, faster turnaround, personalization, and eco-friendly solutions. And I think we could actually, in PTRI, respond to these challenges and opportunities awaiting there. Then we had a talk from Mr. Dean Buendia of FOBA, of the Foreign Buyers Association of the Philippines. He talked about the product lifecycle management, and he also showed us one of the programs that are actually used to shorten production time. And then we had the perspective from academe, from Ms. Christine Bennett from the Del Salle College of St. Benil, who talked about and discussed the different elements and principles of design. This is actually more of a setting us in the right frame, so that we talked about things on an equal footing, on equal and similar definitions. And then we could actually discuss how to move further. And she said that the main difference of art and fashion is actually acceptance. And the fashion is, in fashion, the only determining factor that you are fashionable is if somebody accepts it. And it's not about the trends, it's not about the market, and the feasibility of creating lines to be bought. So the talk of Ms. Bennett actually gave us a perspective how we actually also hone the next set of artisans, next set of artists, textile designers, and those that actually utilize and propel the consumption of technology in the Philippines. And then last but certainly not least was a presentation by Mr. Richard Zhao from LITEC. And he's actually is from the company that supplied PTRI of the body scanning machine that we have. And he talked about three-dimensional body scanning for the mass customization in the apparel industry. And we cannot overemphasize how this one actually jumpstarts the development and initiatives that we have in the Institute. So, having said this, let me go through maybe we could say a collective position. Yeah, of course, the panel discussion followed thereafter. So, how does all of this come into play? We see the immense possibilities of the fourth industrial revolution and how it presents itself for textiles and apparels in the Philippines. But let us not forget, and I'm now zooming a little bit further, that the Philippines has a very unique economic context to all of this. We have a limited industry scale, and with it also comes limited access to technological advances. Thus, the strategic approach towards the fourth industrial revolution is actually required and imperative. The World Economic Forum Readiness for the Future of Production report in 2018 described the Philippines as having a strong current production base, but weak in maximizing its potential. This is especially at risk in the future due to the weak performance across the drivers of innovation. What are these? Technology and innovation, human resource, global trade and investment, institutional framework. This includes the legal framework, intellectual property framework, sustainable resources, and the demand environment. And the World Economic Forum suggests that the Philippines should invest to strengthen these drivers, enable access to foreign technologies, increase the absorption capacity of these technologies locally, and technological access and readiness may be readily addressed by government spending. Remember, the Secretary did not at all allude to issues about shortage of funds in R&D. But government spending in research and development and innovation are there, but more challenging is how we actually can raise or increase our capability to absorb, convert, and maximize the use of these technologies. So such an increase in technological absorption or absorptive capacity locally requires that the complementary drivers of production are also there. We must ensure that there's availability of a technologically literate, sometimes scientifically literate workforce, a business climate that's conducive for investment, the creation and expansion of firms using higher technology processes, access to capital, and now looking at the business side of it, the management appetite, the innovation appetite, if both public and private sectors, regulatory frameworks, standards, supportive of innovation and does not actually curtail the creative arts, as well as the public sector, and that's government, that is there to promote the diffusion of critical technologies where the private demand or the market forces are actually inadequate or may still be very small. So at DOST, we ensure sufficient investment in R&D and innovation. At PTRI, I invite you to learn more about what we're doing there, just as we also extend ourselves to let you know what we are actually brewing in the Institute. However, these are not guarantees to potential gains from the Industrial Revolution 4.0. The Philippines needs to come up with complementing policies and perspectives to encourage innovation, promote technology-based businesses. So we already mentioned the Innovation Act a while ago, and this places it in the center of our development policies. This creates, in a way, a resilient national culture of innovation that fuels the thriving businesses in the textile sector. But for Philippine textiles, in particular, we have a current labor-intensive manufacturing processes that actually, as brought up earlier, faces the threat of automation. We have answered them partially during our open forum, but still, regardless if it is in textiles or any other field, routine jobs are really at risk of being replaced by machines. Routine jobs. And the high cultural value and social relevance of textiles in the Philippine context pose a unique challenge and a golden opportunity for the Philippines to cope with the new without losing the spirit and the essence of our national identity. The textile heritage of the Philippines also, as they say, especially when we go to the communities, are in the bosom of the women in the countryside. The women are actually the repository of designs, ideas, techniques, narratives, stories. Thus, the gender dimension is also part. It layers into the Industrial Revolution discussion. So we must not also be oblivious to this. So many other considerations. The Business World reports that in 2030, there's actually some shades of hope. The Philippines has the potential to be the leader in creative economy in ASEAN in terms of size and value of our creative industries, as well as the competitiveness and the attractiveness of our creative talent and the content in a global context. One that machines or automation would not be able to replace. So in the Philippines, the science, technology, and innovation agenda is actually cognizant to this call. The investment in R&D and human resource, among many others, are there. The mechanisms are being set up. But we have to be conscious of a bigger backdrop that collectively sets the tone and the pace of Philippine textile prospects in the dawn of the Industrial Revolution. We at PTRI is the task, our mandate, and morally also, is tasked to lead this move to make Philippine textiles more responsive and more vibrant in our day and age. And we encourage everyone, both in the private sector, to rally behind the Institute as we champion the cause of Philippine textiles with the Industrial Revolution at its backdrop. With this, thank you for joining us here, and we wish you a safe trip back home. Afternoon.
Thank you, everyone. I hope to see you next NSTW 2020.